Welcome to my channel, where mysteries unfold, strange tales come to life, and the unexplained takes center stage. Here, we dive deep into eerie legends, unsolved cases, and supernatural phenomena that defy logic. Are you ready to step into the unknown? Brace yourself, keep an open mind, and join us as we uncover the world's greatest mysteries. Please listen to the story Bad Intentions. We lived in a neighborhood called Pilsen in Chicago. One of my aunts lived across the street, but I used to love to go over there, to be with my cousins. The houses in Pilsner are really big old structures. It was an old, predominantly immigrant neighborhood, but the houses are Victorian style. They have a big living room, big dining rooms, small bedrooms, big kitchens, a lot of hidden closets, and little places where you can hide. Play hide and go seek. They had little crawl spaces in some of the closets. Those were our favorite places to play. In my cousin's house, there was a closet that had little stairs. Inside the little stairs was another little crawl space. We used to go in there and talk about the things that kids talk about, but you can hear things that were going on in the other rooms. One time, me and my cousins were playing in there, and we heard my aunts did not like him. They called him a bruto, a bad man or a witch. My aunt had been married and loved her husband. To go with this uncle, they all said that he had practiced witchcraft on her, to get her to go with him. That was unheard of at that time for someone to leave their first husband and to go with someone else. And he was much, much older than my aunt. Much older. Most of my aunts were afraid of him. My uncle, he was calling out to things. He was saying bad words, calling for revenge, and we got scared. My cousins were telling me, he sometimes does that when he gets angry at people. We're not supposed to go into his room or talk to him. We heard him stop and walk out of the room. I went into his room, into his closet. We found a little box, a little black box. Inside of it were little bottles of oils. Hair-crossed is. He caught us looking in there. He yelled at his kids. "What are you doing in here? And you're never supposed to come in here." I got really scared and he told me to go home. I went home. I was really scared. My mom asked me what happened. What did you do over there?" 'Cause my aunt called her and said that I had been misbehaving and not to come back. My mom really reprimanded me very much. I was very sorry. She told me to apologize to my aunt and uncle, which I did. I couldn't get out of my mind the stuff that happened with the closet and the things that I found. I was sitting with my dad in the kitchen. I used to wait for my dad to get home to eat with him. My dad was a very religious man. He was always in the church. He was a deacon. Every time I had a problem at school or anything, I would always see him reading his Bible. He would always say, "There's a story in the Bible about that, about bullying. If I had a problem with my brother," he would say, the story of Joseph. He had problems with his brother. He was always talking to me about the Bible. I told him what happened. He was furious, very upset. He dropped his plate of frijoles, grabbed me from my hand and started opening the door to go across the street, and grabbed me and didn't say a word. My dad knocked on their door. He confronted my uncle. He said, "I don't ever want you to expose my daughter to any of that kind of stuff. You shouldn't do that to your children either." He looked at me and didn't say anything. My dad just left and he said, "You don't ever have to be afraid to tell me anything." Like that again. After that happened, one day I was home sick from school. I heard the doorbell ring. This happened a couple of weeks later. I opened the door. It was my uncle. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. My aunt wasn't with him. I didn't know why he was there. I told my mom my uncle's here. She was surprised. Also, she said, okay, let him in. She told me to keep him in the living room. So I just stayed there with him. I didn't talk to him and put my head down. He said, come here. I didn't want to go to him. So my mom called him to have some coffee in the kitchen. Then he laughed right away. I don't know what he came to tell my mother that day. Whatever it was, it scared my mom. That same night I went to sleep. I shared a room with my little brother. Something that caught my attention. I saw a light coming in through the corner of my bedroom. As I looked up, I saw a man. He had an old chauffeur kind of uniform on, and he had dark glasses on. His skin was really pale. I could just see his hand. His hand had a black ring on it. I could see the buttons of his jacket. He was looking at me. His face was so pale. His lips were blackish. He looked at me, and he had the dark glasses. I could see he was looking straight at me. He just stayed there, staring, peeking. I just froze, and I tried to pretend that it was a dream. I know I saw him. I kept closing my eyes and opening them up again. He was still there. He pointing at me and nodding, yes. I let out a scream and called for my mom. My mom came into the room and said, what's going on? I said, I saw this man. It's like, oh, you're just dreaming, don't worry. You did something you shouldn't have done. And now you're feeling bad. That's why you can't sleep. She stayed with me and she prayed with me. I went to sleep when she was next to me. I was very rattled for the next few days. Another night I was asleep. I heard a thump right in front of my bed. A big thump. I opened my eyes and I saw, like a cane that looked like a rain cane. A cane that makes the sound of rain. It was being held by a woman in a dark dress. There was a little girl with her that had sunken eyes. She had blondish hair. The little girl was so sad. She was being held by the wrist by this woman. The other hand she had on that cane. She looked at me, and she thumped again real hard on the floor. I knew she wanted me to get up. She was staring down at me. I didn't know what to do. I was frozen. She thumped again. I knew that I had to get up. I sat up in my bed, and she moved out of my way, towards the door to go out into the dining room. As I looked at her, she looked back at me like, are you coming? I got up. I started to follow them into the living room. I don't know why I started to follow them. I knew I had to. I knew I did. I walked into the parlor. What looked like a parlor. The whole living room was different. We had a fireplace. A real fireplace in the home. My mom always put a chair there because the cold air would come into the house from the chimney. The chair wasn't there. There was a fire actually going in the fireplace. There were all these people sitting in the living room, looking at me. There was that man. He was dressed in that same chauffeur outfit, with his cap on the dark glasses. He started walking towards me. I saw the room. I was just amazed at the room. The furniture was different. The curtains. Everything was different, except that there was a picture of my mom and dad. I looked at it. Was my mom and dad's wedding picture. It's a black and white picture, and as I looked at it, it crashed down on the floor. Everything stopped, and I was standing in that dark living room. I was weeping and wailing. This time, my dad came into the... I was like, "What is going on?" "What are you doing?" I said, "Dad." And I explained to him what had just happened. He just told me that everything was going to be okay. Nothing was going to happen. He believed me. Then my mom came and said, "I think she's just making things up." My dad said, "No, I do believe. My daughter, leave her alone." I was crying. I went back into the room. I couldn't get that out of my mind. Margarita's story continues right after this. Stay with us. Through the weeks, the teachers started to send notes home to my parents, saying what was wrong with me. My grades were dropping. There was a lot of arguing in the house. My mom and dad were fighting all the time. One of the arguments started to stem up because my uncle would no longer let my aunt come to visit. Our house and I was not allowed to go over there. I told one of my aunts what was going on, and she came and talked to me, and she said, "I know what's going on. I know he's a brujo. What you have is something called Sosto. He scared you. He scared you. And you can't be afraid of those things. You can't give that power. You have to trust that all is going to be okay. There is always a power bigger than anything bad. For everything that is bad. If you believe in bad, you have to believe in good." She told me the next time that woman came, or anybody came into my room, to tell them to go away, that you are not going with them, that you are protected. Do not allow them to take you anywhere. The next time it happened, a few days later, I saw the man again. This time he put his hand out like, "You're coming with me." I said, "No, I'm not going with you." I started to yell loud. And no, I'm not going. I thought I was talking. But I wasn't. I couldn't talk. But in my mind I was saying, I'm not going with you. I'm not going. I was terrified of him. He started to walk towards me. At that time, my brother started to rumble in his sleep. I moved from my bed to his side of the bed. I lied down next to my brother and started to hug my brother. I closed my eyes. I said, "I'm not going. I'm not going." I started hearing the thumping from a woman. I couldn't look. I kept saying, "I'm not going." It seemed endless, but it finally stopped. It stopped, I felt like. There was clean air. I felt it leave. I felt the chills, the darkness, the dampy smell, because it came with a musty kind of smell, like wet dirt, but with garbage. It's a smell you can't ever forget, the musky, dirty smell of earth. And it was gone. I didn't smell it anymore. Weeks later, the arguing between my parents settled down. Things started going back to normal in our house. They would greet each other. They would start laughing together. We started being our regular family again. It was at that time that my uncle and aunt decided to move back to Puerto Rico. They decided they were going to pick up and take the kids back to Puerto Rico. But before that happened, my aunt got very sick. She had to be put in a home. She had a series of strokes. And my uncle left her to live in Puerto Rico. After that, we heard stories about him joining some kind of church and getting arrested for hurting children. Eventually, my aunt and him divorced. We heard nothing from him again. My other cousins had run-ins with him. He died a terrible death as well. He caught, gangrene. He died in prison for whatever it was that he did in Puerto Rico. I can't really say, I just know that was something against a child in a church. He was accused and found guilty. In Puerto Rico, he was a chauffeur, but I think it was in another aspect of him, because he was a chauffeur in Puerto Rico. He used to drive a taxi or drive people. I do know that. He used to work for a rich family in Puerto Rico. Driving them around, I found that out much later. But that would make sense why I saw him like that. None of them want to see him at the end. They're all good people to this day. I adore my cousins. They grew up to be wonderful, wonderful people. They remembered their father with love. But not many of our other relatives agree with that. My aunt tells me how brave I was to be able to confront him. And that's a lesson I've learned. I have to always face my fears with courage. Years later, I would talk to my brother about this. I was telling him, I used to be really scared in that house. He said, "Oh yeah, the lady with the cane, right?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I remember when she used to come into our room and try to take you away." I said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He said, "Because I didn't want her to take me. I'd rather her try to take you than to take me." He validated it for me, my brother told me. No matter where I am, I will always protect you. My brother died in 2020 from COVID. I still feel him around me. Sometimes when I'm scared or feeling lonely, I'll feel his presence around me, and I know that he's close. I've also learned now that there are some things that are always good here. And in the afterlife, you can embrace those. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. So please listen to the story, Our Home on Cursed Grounds. The house that we were living in was built in 1946. Strange, weird things were happening. From my grandfather all the way up to me. My grandfather, he was the first one to experience stuff. He was full-blood Cherokee Indian. So he was all about the native, the tales. His first experience, he was in the army. He would go outside, do the perimeter check. And he said one night, when he was close to the alley, he saw this dog that didn't have a head, but you can hear a bark. At the same time, he sees this dog. Something from under the ground wraps around his legs and does not want to let him go. So he started praying in Cherokee. He was a prayer warrior, for sure. It eventually let him go, and he went in the house. That was the very first incident he had. My aunt had a lot going on with her too. She said that she saw him in the yard walking around, and she called out to him. He wouldn't answer. She finally said, "Dad." And when he turned around, he had laser red, glowing eyes that looked at her and then looked away. And she ran in the house, and my grandfather, he was in the house making a sandwich in the kitchen when my aunt was around 12 years old or so. It was about midnight or something like that. So it was dark? It was really late? He said that he saw something carrying my aunt. I don't know if it's a demon or if it was. Whatever it was carrying my aunt. My grandfather, he asked, "Who are you?" He was a medicine man also, so he was never afraid of things like that. He was our ghost buster, if you will. He asked it, "Who are you? What do you want with my daughter?" Whatever it was, that thing got spooked from my grandfather. He said, "You need to leave. You're not going anywhere with my daughter." Whatever it was left did not come back to that house. Anyway, my grandmother, she used to work at a daycare center that was like down the street from the house, and my aunt, she would help her. One night, she had sent my aunt back to the house to go get some extra towels and extra bibs to bring back to the daycare center. My mom was out with friends. My uncle was out with friends. The only person that was in the house was my aunt. When she went there, she went to the room, was getting towels and bibs. When she looked up in the mirror, there was some tall thing standing behind her and put its hand on her shoulder. She said that the hand looked like it had very long, talon-like nails. She couldn't move. She said it was really cold. She looked down and looked back in the mirror, and it was gone. She tried to get out of the room. The door wouldn't open, like it was locked, but from the outside. And there was a lock on the inside, but not on the outside. She heard my uncle come in, and she thought that my uncle was playing tricks on her, because that's what brothers do. He let her out, and I just got here. I don't know what, y'all. I just got here. That was it for that night. She went back to the daycare center with my grandmother. I've always been able to see things. Even when I was a little kid, my grandmother had a grandfather clock that had the glass door with pendulum. My cousin, my uncle, my aunt were staying with us for a little while. The adults got the rooms and the kids. Of course, I made a pallet on the floor in the living room. Sometimes I couldn't sleep, actually. That was a lot of the time I couldn't sleep. I would be up and just looking around. And when I was about 4 or 5 is when this happened. And it kept happening like all the time. I would see this lady in the pendulum area of the clock. She was like a Victorian lady. Like she had the big poofy bun on top. And she had a Victorian lace dress that would button up all the way up the neck. She would always stare at me and smile. I remember one night, it was always between 2 and 3 in the morning. She actually held her hand out to me. She only did it one time. I don't know what that was about. I don't know if that was an ancestor. I don't know what that was. But I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel. The kids are very susceptible to things like that. I never felt like it was bad. I was dating this person. That apparently was a very evil-spirited. You know, you don't really recognize things. When you first get into a relationship with someone, you're just all lovey-dovey, and nothing can break y'all kind of thing. I didn't realize that. There was something that's always around her. But my mother did not like this woman at all. Didn't know why. She just knows that she did not like her. Every time she was around, something would happen to my mom. One time, she fell out of nowhere. She just fell. And she said there was another time that she fell. It felt like something pushed her. My ex and me were sitting outside at the time. When that happened, things like that would happen with my mom. And nobody else, just my mom. I think one of the most terrifying experiences would be, I want to say it was November 1st of 2013, 2014. This person, she was the kind of person that stalked you. I didn't realize that this was going to be an issue. It apparently was. One night, I was out there with her, trying to just keep the peace. On my street, there is no streetlights nearby. There is a streetlight on either end to the street, for the cross street, but there's nothing like in the middle. So where my house was just like pitch black almost, just the glare from the streetlights from afar. We're sitting there, we're talking. I see this dark figure walking towards the car, was dressed in all black. I don't even know if it had a face. It just was just all black. It slowly walked past the car. I'm looking by my driveway, 'cause we're parked on the street. My mom's car is parked in the driveway. There was no more room when this guy, or whatever it was, passed my driveway. They disappeared. Right in front of her face is disappeared. That freaked us both out, but it's like, okay, you know what? Things like this happen around my house all the time. Now, mind you, she drove a Nissan Sentra that was a 5-speed. So when you put a manual car in park, you normally put the emergency brake on. That car is not going nowhere. She was parked, had the emergency brake on. We were sitting there and just chilling and talking. All of a sudden, we feel this giant push on this car. The car moved from at least 10 to 15 feet forward. It's in park, and the emergency brake's on. So what do? We get out. We get out of the car. We look on the ground with my phone flashlight, and there is a broken brick on the ground that has an upside-down cross on it. We jetted to the 7th, 11 to get away from there. When we looked to the back of the car on the bumper, like something was underneath the car, pushing the car from the bumper. We drove back to my house, parked in the opposite direction. Now we pulled up. Everything that was on the ground was gone. The brick was gone. Both pieces of the brick was gone. Like somebody swept it up. I don't know who it was 2 a.m, but there was nothing on the ground. If someone was out, we would leave the dining room light on. Where the dining room was, it was catty corner to the front door, so you can see the light shining into the door. My front door was like about a 6.5-foot door, with a half-moon stained glass at the top. Now, mind you, everyone in my house is about 5'3" at the most. There is no way that anyone in my family, in that house, could see out of that stained glass window. We're talking, starting to get into an argument. I looked to my left, which is where my door was, and I saw a dark figure in the stained glass. I blinked a few times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. It was there. I looked away. I was like, oh my God. She looked over there. She saw it too. Then I look back. It was gone, like nothing was there. I did not go in my house until daylight, because I was not about to go and find out what that was. I've never seen something that scared me like that. There were times when me and my aunt would be sitting on the couch. Now, mind you, this house, like I said, was built in 1946, so it didn't have central heat and air. It had a swamp cooler. It's the big thing that sits outside your house, and you have it connected to a water hose, or you water it every few hours, and it blows air like with a manual fan. It was the winter time when this happened. Me and my aunt were sitting on the couch while we were watching TV. We heard something walking, crushing leaves by the water cooler. There was this very demonic growl. That happened outside that night. And then we moved to the other couch. There was also demonic growling behind the couch. I had an ex that I was with at the time. I woke up. I want to say it was like 2:30. Something like that, about 2:30. I looked over, her back was facing me. Her room is pitch black. No lights. Not even from the bathroom, nothing was on. I turn over and I look at her. When I tell you, her head, and only her head, turned around to face me. When she faced me, her eyes opened up and they were the same red, glowing eyes in my father had in Dallas. I got up, I went in the living room. It was dark. Her mother is there sitting in the dark and asked me, "What's the matter? You can't sleep." I said, "No, ma'am, I cannot. What are you doing in the dark? I turned the light on. She wasn't there. That was. The last time that I spent the weekend over there, I never told her about that. Because I was afraid it would happen again. I don't know if that was a warning to save myself from something, or if that was just something just to scare me. I have no clue. At that time, my grandfather, he was still living. I could talk to him about anything. So when something like that would happen, he was able to tell me things. He was telling me that particular incident with the glowing eyes. There's someone trying to keep you away from her. There's something that's not right. I don't know what it was. I don't know if the mom was doing something. I don't know because, like I said, she was there in the living room. But when I turned the light on, she was gone. I was doing DoorDash because I almost died last year. And I came home to like a $500 light bill. Being on a wound vac and trying to work is very bad, but I had to make money from my light bill. So my lights won't get cut off because it was a summertime and in Texas. It's hot as hell here, like it prepares you for hell. I'm doing the DoorDash thing, right? I have my brother with me. My wife was with me, and she was in the front seat. He was in the back seat. I want to say we were in Roanoke, Texas. Because we do DoorDash, it takes you wherever. That's where the money is. That's where I'm gonna go. I had just dropped off at someone's house, and we were leaving to go back to civilization on this pitch black road. There was one street light way down, right before you gone into the highway. I saw this dark figure all in black. I want to say the figure was really tall and slender. It had no face. This one had no face. It was just a black void. If you will, it was just like contorting. Like the head was like the head, but had no face. Was moving around, contorting in the legs. My wife saw it also. We both looked at it. Like you see those horror movies where bones are cracking and stuff. That's what it was doing standing up. Walking, but contorted at the same time. When I passed it, it disappeared. I said, "Babe, did you see that she started praying her prayers?" I'm just so glad that I didn't have car trouble. I think my grandfather gave me, along with God, of course, the gift of dreams. Because I have dreams about things that are gonna happen. Some of the things that I've dreamt have happened, because it kind of feels like deja vu in a way. If I dream something, it's probably gonna happen, like within the next month or so. I guess the warning dreams, maybe premonition dreams look like that. I've always been very cautious. My grandfather, he always said, if you see something, something follows you. You just walk away. That was always a rule of thumb with us. If we see something, just walk away. Just pretend like it's not there. Pray it'll go away eventually. My grandfather, he raised me from 6 to 18, so I lived in the trailer park with him. And my step-grandmother. That night we were having a Halloween party. It was late, we decided to go for a walk on the Trinity River Bridge. Now at that time they had blew up half of the bridge because they were repairing it. So there was like a giant space in between one end to the other. That night we all decided to go out there, chill out for a little bit. It was like midnight. Where the bridge is, it's woods on both sides, like woods and the river. We're there, we hear something. We like, okay, we're leaving, we're going back. We started walking back, and all of a sudden, you hear rustling in the bushes again. Then it moves to the other side, and it goes back to the other side, and goes to the other side. We ran back to where the party was, 'cause, yeah, No, it was Halloween. It was the weekend. We were sitting outside in my friend's house, and all of a sudden one of my other friend, freaked out. He ran like he made a beeline to the bushes. He stayed in there for a little bit. Some other friend went to go get him. And something happened to him in those bushes. Because when my other friend had brought him out, he had to hold him up with his arm around his neck and hold him up and walk him back to the house. He had his head down while he was walking to the house. When he looked up at me, and only I saw it, he had the same red, glowing eyes. Fast forward a few hours later, everything calms down. My friend's window curtains was open. I took a picture of the boys, sitting in front of the window. Now, when I took this picture, it was the 3 boys, and then for whatever reason, my friend had a digital clock that stopped working. It started blinking. It was blinking 11:34 upside down. 11:34 upside down spells hell. Okay, I take the picture. Everything's good. A few days later, I get to develop the pictures. That picture that I took of the 3 of them had the clock in the picture that said hill, and there was somebody's face in his window. The guy had been about 6'2". Adamuna. I don't know if it was somebody just being a peep, and Tom or what, but I know that when I looked in the lens. Taking the picture, there was nobody there but the 3 boys. A couple died in our house. It was an older couple. Now, I don't know if they are the ones that are haunting it. I'm pretty sure it's gotta be something more demonic. Because demonic growling, seeing that big old shadow person in the door, that doesn't seem like peaceful to me. That's why it freaks me out. When there's an open door or an open window, and it's dark outside, like a closet, and all closets have to be closed, I will not sleep with a door open. It has to be closed, a window, especially at nighttime, needs to be closed. The curtains need to be drawn. I don't want to see outside, and I don't want nothing to see me inside. To share your own story with us, head on over to TrueScaryStory.com and fill out the form. And if you know of someone who might like this too, make sure you send it to them. To support our show and listen without ads, try out Scary Plus. It's free for 2 weeks and then $4.99 a month, and you can cancel whenever you want. It's over on scaryplus.com. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. My name is Edwin, and here is Jim Harold's True Scary Story. Hi, I'm Jim Harold. I do a podcast called Jim Harold's Campfire, and real people come on and tell their stories. Every week we do about 90 minutes of real stories from real people, and occasionally we will put these together for a book. And just recently I came out with True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire 6, and this is what I think is one of the most frightening stories in the book. And this one's about a curse. This was John from Idaho, and I'm going to share the story in his voice. John's story. John says, I kept this story to myself for many years, primarily for fear of ridicule. I probably wouldn't believe it had I not been there. My father ran a painting business in the late 70s and early 80s, employing several people. One of the men wasn't working out. My dad decided that he needed to let him go. I don't remember why I was home that particular day, but I witnessed the entire incident. I was only about 10 years old. This man came to our house on the day in question, as all the men did every morning, before going out to perform their assignments. My dad pulled the worker aside and said, I'm going to have to let you go. This just isn't working out. And the fellow, Molly, became very upset, and he said, "You can't fire me," my dad replied. "Why couldn't I do that?" The man said, "Because I'm Jesus Christ." "What do you say to that?" my dad says. "You're not Jesus Christ. You're fired and you need to leave." This man was obviously very upset. He looked at all of us and said, "I curse you, I curse you. I curse your family. I place this curse on you. And you will have bad luck from this point on." Now, you always hear about curses, but you rarely see the real thing. We didn't think too much of it because this guy seemed, well, somewhat unhinged. Now, this may or may not be the event that led to everything that followed still. It framed that way in my mind because it was directly after the curse that life began to go very poorly for our family. I hate to call it bad luck, but within a year, my mother became ill with cancer and passed away. Then my dad had a couple of multi-million-dollar lawsuits filed against his business due to a couple of freakish accidents. He lost his business, got ill, and died within a couple of years. With the context of all this going on, some extraordinary things begin to happen. Around the house, started to stray out of the area of terrible luck into my mind, the paranormal. I recall minor incidents. I was walking through the house and heard a knocking on an inside wall. Not an outside wall, but an inside wall when I was home by myself. It was a very loud, clear knocking. That sort of thing continued for some time, and we could never figure out why. And I'd be up a lot in the middle of the night, and I remember looking out our front yard and seeing someone standing underneath our willow tree at 2 or 3 in the morning. That was after my mom passed, and my initial thought was that my eyes were playing tricks on me, and I was only seeing a shadow. But it was one strange shadow. On more than one occasion, I saw it detach itself from the tree and move away. Life was tough within a few short years. My mother died then, my grandmother, my only surviving grandparent, died, and my father passed as well. The intensity continued to ratchet up until this one night. It was 1980, and I was asleep in bed when I had a dream, which was absolutely horrible. In it, I began to see this green fog come up the stairway, and then, out of the mist, I saw my mother and grandmother emerging. But they weren't ordinary people. They were crawling along the ceiling. With claws and fangs, it was just a terrible, terrible dream. I woke up with a start, very shaken, but clearly cognizant that this was just a dream. And at that point, I felt pressure on my chest, pushing me down into my bed and holding me there. Of course, I'm familiar with sleep paralysis, but I don't know how to think about it. Sometimes I considered it a purely physical phenomenon. In other times, I believe there was a supernatural component that may exist. And when I experienced it, it felt anything but physical. As a matter of fact, it seemed like what I believe they call the old hag syndrome. That seemed to be a lot more appropriate. Because not only was I unable to move, but I felt pressure pushing me down into my bed. Then, as I was fully awake, struggling against that force, I heard a voice whisper my name very loudly. Clearly next to me, it said, "John." I still couldn't move. I was obviously scared to death and trying to shake this off. Finally, the pressure was released. I jumped out of my bed and quickly went toward my light switch. Underneath it, I saw something very hard to describe. Words fail me. and I don't know what to call it. Maybe a creature. It stood about 3 foot tall. It was red and had a scaly body. Very thick, was about the size of a fire hydrant. At least that's what it reminded me of. Around its head, going all the way around in a circle, were small horns protruding outward. I saw it, I stopped. And I'm telling the truth. It opened its mouth and it laughed at me. I leapt to the side, turned on the light switch, and there was nothing. I was very shaken at that point, questioning my sanity. I went downstairs into the living room. I sat down in a chair. I put my head in my hands, trying to make sense of the world. Opposite me, our television set. Well, it turned itself on. We didn't have a remote control. It was 1980. You had to physically go over to the deviant Bolivian. I didn't turn it on. And I know it. It powered on by itself. Stations didn't broadcast 24/7 back then. So there was only static on the television. I didn't know what to do. I got up, shut it off, and looked out the front window. There was that shadow again standing. I don't remember what happened from there, except to say I tucked this away as best as possible into the back of my psyche, thinking nobody would ever believe this if you said I felt a touch. I heard a kick, that's one thing, but to claim I saw a creature that I could see and describe, that's likely to be dismissed. But there it is, that's my story. After my father died, everything seemed to just turn around. It was a strange series of horrible coincidences for those few years, if that's what they were, coincidences. I have my doubts. It was just one tragedy after another, and I wouldn't have tied it together had I not seen that man point at us, look us in the eye and say, "I curse you. I curse you. I curse you." And that's the story of John from Idaho, from the files of Jim Harold's campfire. So what do you think I mean? To be clear, that's John's story. Not mine, thank goodness. But are curses possible? Can we be cursed? And I do believe in the triumph of good over evil. But I also think evil exists, and I believe curses are real. And they can have real impact, and I believe they had a real impact on John. What a story. It's really awesome to be on the show with Edwin, and love what he does. And we do our own little version of true ghost stories that you can find Jim Harold's Campfire anywhere you find podcasts. And we do it every week, 90 minutes of people calling in. Very kind of raw and just their first-person experiences with the strange and supernatural. And also, I have a series of books, True Ghost Stories, Volumes 1 through 6, Jim Harold's Campfire. You can find those mainly on Amazon's, the best place to find them. Don't have to read them in any certain order. Every book has 65 to 70 spooky ghost stories in it. And not just ghost stories. We have some cryptid stories and so forth, but we've been doing those for a year. So we hope that you get to check it out, and you add Jim Harold to Campfire in your rotation, along with the great podcast you're listening to now, True Scary Story. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jim. If you want to hear my story, through an interview with Jim, go check out his podcast over on the Paranormal Podcast and let him know I sent you. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you. Please listen to the story, 3 Chilling Paranormal Encounters. My name is Edwin, and here are Diana's, Vanessa's, and Adrian's true scary stories. Growing up when I was little, we used to go to Mexico every summer. We are from the state of Juarez, Mexico. My grandparents used to own a plot of land. Technically, they still own it, but they passed away a few years ago. And so my aunts and uncles still live there. There's about 5 houses on that plot of land. Their main house and then the other 4 houses. My family's land is actually built on top of a cemetery. And so, there's always been different stories of things that they've seen, things that have happened. My dad owned the house that was located nearest to where the cemetery is. They would always hear banging on the walls. My mom, who is a non-believer of anything paranormal, one time stayed there, and she was woken up in the middle of the night with banging all on the walls, and it wasn't just on once, it was just all over the house, just banging all over the house. During breakfast time with everybody around, she's like, yeah, I didn't get good sleep last night because there was banging on the walls, Maybe something happened with the neighbor, and she was using the hammer. And they're like, no, that's actually very common in that house. As a matter of fact, my other uncle who lives a house over has also heard those bangings. And so he came out in the middle of the night to see who was, causing chaos out there. He brought some type of weapon out with him, just to make sure he had, something to protect himself with, because he really thought it was a person. And he said he went all around that house and did not find anybody there. My grandma had gone to a flea market out in Mexico, and she bought a dresser with an attached mirror to it at this flea market intended for my uncle. She took it to my uncle's house. They had it set up some time passed by. One night my uncle was asleep and something woke him up. He felt this uneasy feeling, like somebody was just looking at him. He woke up, and he was kind of scanning the room. It's dark. He can't really see anything. He's still half asleep, and in the corner of the room, he sees a little boy who's about anywhere from 8 to 10 years old. He's just looking at him, and he tries to call out to him to get his attention. Little boy is not moving. He's not doing anything other than just staring at my uncle, so my uncle decides to grab, like his cover or a pillow to throw at him to. Get a reaction out of this little boy to see what are you doing in my room? The little boy jumps from where he was to the dresser and disappears into the mirror. Fast forward maybe the next summer. My adult cousin and her son, who was at the time around that same age, went to Mexico to visit for the summertime. We all know we all go back home to visit for vacation. My uncle lends her his room so she could sleep in there with her kid in the middle of the night at around the same time. Her little boy starts shaking her mommy. Mommy, mommy. Wake up, there's a little boy. Oh, mijo. Go to sleep, go to sleep. You're dreaming, there's nothing there, mommy. Mommy. There's a little boy, and he's smiling at me, and his teeth are ugly. No, mijo. There's nothing there, go back to sleep. Finally, he gives up, and he goes back to sleep. During breakfast the next morning, my cousin is complaining of how tired she is because her little boy didn't let her sleep. And they are telling the story to my uncle, who's in a house that belongs to, and my grandma. And so my uncle and my grandma kind of just stare at each other because they know what happened to him. She goes on to tell them that, yeah, he kept trying to wake me up, that there was a little boy in the room, and that the little boy was smiling at him. And my uncle is like, well, that kind of happened to me too. He proceeds to tell her his story. Needless to say, my cousin and her son did not sleep there. The following night, that same dresser and mirror ends up in the possession of an aunt of mine here in the United States. My aunt, very superstitious. She had gone to see like a witch doctor at this time. The mirror and the dresser are put away in the garage. She knows the story of this mirror. Why she has possession of this mirror, I don't know, even though she knows the story. Anyway, she goes and sees a witch doctor for unrelated reasons. And this witch doctor gives her this little blanket, which is like a little pillow. A green one and a red one. One was intended for like luck, and the other one was intended for money. And she always carried these little pillows with her, in her purse. One day she was rummaging through her purse, and she notices that those pillows are gone. At the time, my aunt had, teenage sons. And so she kind of confronted them about it and was like, hey, you guys were going through my purse. My little pillows are gone. Why were you guys going through my purse? They all deny. They're like, no, Mom. It wasn't us, we didn't do anything like that. They end up finding those pillows by the mirror, in the garage, and no idea how they got there. Once that happened to her specifically, that's when they're like, okay, no, we need to get rid of this mirror. Something is wrong with this mirror. We got it at a flea market. It's in Mexico, so something or somebody must have done something to this mirror that, would have caused like this little boy to get stuck in there. And so ultimately that's what led to their decision to get rid of that mirror. Everything stopped, like there was no other occurrences with a little boy or anything going missing after they broke it. Essentially, we've always been scared that that land was built over a cemetery, because there's been other like small occurrences that have happened, but I think that's the creepiest one. This took place May of 2015. Me and my husband were going to New Orleans for the first time. We have a timeshare thing, so we were able to get a 2-story room. We were going to be there for 2 whole weeks. For whatever reason, they would not let us stay in the same room. For both weeks, we had to stay in one room for 1 week, and then they had to check us out and put us in another room for the second week. This happened the last Friday that we were there, on the first week, if that makes sense. When checking into the room at first, you're looking at it and it's so cool. It totally looked like what you would think New Orleans would look like. It had like brick wall. There was weird kind of paintings in there. And I remember even walking in there. I was taking pictures and showing the video and everything. Walking throughout everything. I remember walking upstairs and getting like a, I don't know about this. I brush it off. Because we were new arrivals for the first time. I was super excited. There was a second room in there too. I just didn't like it. I don't want to be in here by myself type thing. The last night that we were there in the first room, I knew that I was dreaming. Because I remember we were in the master bedroom. Like I said, this was like a 2-story room. I remember sitting up in my bed, and I kept hearing things. I felt like it was cabinets opening and closing. Opening closings and doors. Opening and closing, opening and closing. I knew no one was in our room. It was just me and my husband. I knew my husband was in the bathroom. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew that my husband was in the bathroom. I was sitting in bed, and I asked, hey, are you not hearing this? When I said that, I felt something pull my leg. I freaked out. All of a sudden, I felt like someone grabbed both my ankles and pulled me down. When they pulled my ankles down, I lay flat on my back on my bed. When I woke up, I couldn't move. I couldn't move like at all. The only thing I could move was my eyelids. I was like, what is going on? I was in the exact same room we were sleeping in. So the first dream took place in the room. When I woke up and couldn't move, I knew I was in the room, and I knew. I could see my husband laying right next to me, in arm's length. All of a sudden, I remember two different things or entities. I don't know what they were, but I felt one hand on one shoulder and another hand on my other shoulder. They were holding me down. It wasn't hard, but I could feel them hold me down. The only thing I can remember is them looking, like the Monet painting of the screaming person. All I saw was they were like misty, and all I saw was like two eye sockets and a long face. I couldn't move anything but my eyelids. For the life of me, I just wanted for him to wake me up, because he was right next to me in bed. All of a sudden, I hear both of those entities. In my voice, in my own voice. I felt like they were making fun of me. I felt like they were mocking me. Like, how you can't talk, how you can't talk. I could feel myself wanting to cry. I just closed my eyes. I was praying to Jesus. I was praying to God, Holy Spirit. I was praying to everybody. My dad had passed 3 years prior. So I even called out to my dad like, Dad, if you can hear me, please. I had called out even to my grandfather, my paternal grandfather who had died in 2012. I was like, please help me, please. As soon as I called out to my grandfather, within maybe 10 seconds, I woke up. I was able to wake up. I immediately woke up my husband, and I was like, I just had a bad dream. I didn't want to tell him everything, because I knew he was dead asleep. So he just comforted me. But I ended up praying for the next 20 minutes, and just thanking God that I was able to wake up from that dream. That was the scariest thing that I ever experienced. I ended up telling my mom at least a year later. She freaked that she was like, what? Oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. She totally believed me though. She's like, I'm sorry that happened to you. I remember the resort that we were staying at was called the Quarter House. It was built in 1830. I know it was really old, and I thought that was really cool because I was like, oh my God, we're staying in a fairly old building. I love history of stuff, but I did not think that that was going to happen. I just thought it was cool because it was really old. If I would have known it was haunted, I would not stay because I'm like such a scaredy cat. Even to this day, I have dreams within dreams, but they're not like that, but they're not like that, but where I wake up like sleep paralysis. But I've had dreams within dreams. This happened to me 19 or 20 years ago. I'm 38 years old. I come from a Hispanic family, and we tend to be friends with our cousins because we have so many of them. I would hang out with a girl cousin of mine very often. One day, she invited me over. Her mom had got a new place. I hadn't been there. I took a bus across town to get to this address. When I got there, my cousin was there with her older sister. Right away, they're like, hey, glad you're here. We were just about to go to the store. Do you want to go with us? I was done with the California heat. And I was like, no, I'll stay here. And she says, great. My daughter, she's asleep. Keep an eye on her. We're just going to go to the corner convenience store. When we get back, they leave, and I stay there watching TV. As soon as they leave, the door closed. The little girl sits up and starts asking me over and over again, where's my mommy at? Where's my mommy at? I would answer her every time. It's almost as if she just didn't hear me. Speaking to her, and would continue to ask. After a while, I just figured, I'm just gonna watch TV. Sit here, little girl, still asking me the same questions. But it could have been 15 or 20 minutes. I hear the metal door, it swings open. Makes that sound that you hear on these doors. Then I can hear the wooden door swing open. Then I hear my cousin. She's laughing, as if they're joking. She says, "Ha, Joanna." I hear what sounds like a plastic bag landing on a wooden table. The exact sound you hear of a cheap corner store bag. I look at the little girl and I respond to her. "Your mom's home." I walk into the kitchen. There's absolutely nobody there. The doors are closed. Everything's closed. There's nothing there. I walk right back to the room thinking, what did I hear? What's going on? The little girl's still sitting there, but now she's staring at me. She starts asking me all over again. Where her mommy's at, she's probably asked me 15, 20 times where her mom's at. In the same tone over and over again. A few minutes later, I hear the wooden door rubbing across the floor. I hear my cousin again laughing, and I hear her say, "Ah." F in Joanna. I hear the bag with the soda hit the table. I'm too scared to get up. I sit there for a minute. I'm not saying anything to a girl. She's still asking me for her mother. All of a sudden, my cousin pops her head around the corner. I jump up, run to the kitchen, and I tell her, "I heard that you guys came. But you weren't here." Both my cousin and her older sister just staring at me, like it's not a big deal. After I tell them what happens to me, they tell me when my mother gets home, "We want you to tell her what happened to you." An hour or two pass. My aunt gets home and she's not surprised. She starts telling me that when she first moved into that house, my aunt, at that time, she was a single mother. When they first moved into that house, she would constantly catch her daughter in her closet, going through the boxes making a mess. My aunt, getting tired of telling her to get out of the closet, she tells her, "What are you doing in there? Why do you keep going in my closet? And what are you searching for?" Her daughter looked at her and told her, "The little girl is telling me that there's toys in here. That's why I'm in here." She tells me she spoke to the owner as she asked him, "There's been weird things happening in this house. Has anybody ever said anything? Or told you anything the owner himself was like? I've had a hard time keeping this place rented. I have heard some things I don't believe too much. I haven't experienced anything myself." He never stayed there. He said that. There was a family that had passed away in that home. A mother and a father, and they had a daughter. They had passed away in that house. My aunt lived there for a number of years. But one thing that had happened to my aunt there, she was dating a man for a while, and they would go out. Sometimes he'd go out on his own. She'd stay home. One night, he had gone out with his friends. She stayed home. She had work. She was tired. She fell asleep in the living room on the couch. Late at night, she woke up to the sounds of somebody getting there. She saw the figure of who she thought was her boyfriend, coming home from a night out with his friends. She said, "I just glanced and told them, 'You're going to sit with me.' And she gave him space at the end of the couch. She saw this figure sit down. Later on, at 3 a.m, there was knocking at the door. She gets up, opens the door. It's her boyfriend, just getting home and being dropped off by his friends. I know other people that things happen to in that house. My sister has a story when she graduated high school. She took one of her high school friends to that house. My mother had gone to the casino with that aunt. This girl, she felt strange sitting in the living room. She kept glancing to her left. where there was a small bathroom. The door looked like it was trying to open. She couldn't hear anything, but the light was on, and then it was open. When she glanced back, the door was still open, but now there was a doll sitting on the sink, and face out of the bathroom. A lot of our family have known that things were happening at that house. I talked to one of my other cousins before I did this interview, and he was even like, yeah, everybody that's been there knows that. There's something weird going on at this house. Everybody doesn't experience the same thing there, but everybody there says that they can feel something there, watching you. You get this feeling as if something's waiting. It's waiting to do something to you. After that happened to me, I would feel uneasy in there. Years ago, I remember trying to look it up about the internet, probably 20 years ago when I was 19. I never really found anything. I know when I looked up the house, I know this house gets rented quite often because it's not a very nice house. Super tiny. It almost looks like a studio with an extra room. I don't think people stay that long. My aunt was one of those people. She was older. She believes in God and everything. It's where she's like, watch. Just pray. Things will leave me alone. But she didn't want to stay there. After a while, she felt like something was trying to be on top of her, hold her down. She needed a struggle, and she got up, caught her breath and stuff. Like that. I had heard stuff like that from that house. I remember seeing an old house being remodeled, our neighbor's house. There would always be stories about this house being haunted. They would rent it. I never saw anything myself. What made me believe, I think, if at all maybe people do sense things, is the neighbors would always say, this little house was haunted. It shared the property light with our house the day that we were remodeling it. I'm probably like in the 6th grade and I'm being nosy. I'm out there, all of a sudden I see that one of the contractor guys. He's like, hey, everybody stop. Go call the owner, because we need to figure something out. They're telling me to go away. I'm like, number. I'm on my property, you can tell me. Go away. Under the house that'd been in that house. They had a cement floor. They had to redo it, because they had cracked. When they lifted up the cement, I'm standing there when they lifted up the cement. There was a human skeleton. It still had clothes on, a flannel shirt and jeans. I remember clearly. I saw construction workers pick up the bones, throw it in the garbage, and continue working. The girls that lived in there, they would see things upstairs and hear sound. I don't know if maybe that has something to do with that, but that's what I saw at that home. When you're a kid, you don't think about these things. But as an adult, I can remember, because it was such a big deal. Like I was like, oh, my God, they found a dead person. But when I think back on what they were doing at that house, when I tell you they found him under the cement, the foundation, they didn't dig. He was in between the poured cement and the dirt. It wasn't like an old burial site or anything. If you picked up a broken piece of cement on the street, it was like right there. I remember seeing hair. It was old, and it bunched up. Almost a red, brownish color. Like bronze. That's what I saw. So it was like the skeleton that's still. It had hair there. It had a flannel shirt on. Obviously all beat up and the colors faded. But the jeans that's... I guess I don't know. I remember seeing the jeans. You think stuff like that would fall apart. They had holes in it, but it was still pretty intact. I remember him reaching for the leg. I had jeans on, but when he pulled, the bones that you have in your waist area, You can see them separate. The long leg bone was still in the pan. So then, they had to pick up the bones individually and throw them away. I remember looking up that. But later as an adult, I didn't know when that house was built, even where to start looking to even think anything. But how many more people are under cement slabs somewhere? This house was on a corner lot. My aunt owned this property. These are older neighborhoods in Fresno, where you had more land. At some point, my aunt, or whoever owned the house before her, they had built a small studio apartment right behind her house and to the right. They built a 2-story, 2-bedroom. It was shaped like a little square. They had built that there. One of my other aunts was staying in the house, right behind her, and they were renting the 2-story one. The reason why they had lifted the floor was because apparently the foundation of the house wasn't sitting right anymore. There were cracks on the walls. The house was shifting, I guess. They had to pour the cement on the base floor of the house, rip up the old stuff and throw it away, and then pour new cement. I remember in their living room right there, where they'd sit and watch TV all the time, was where that crack was. And that's where the body was under that crack. The foundation cracked where that dead body was. Up next, be sure to check out my other podcast called Scary Story Podcast. And if you're into more historical and mysteries, stuff like that, be sure to check out Horror Story. I'll see you over there if you want to support the show. Head on over to Scary Plus. Calm as always. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon, everyone. See you soon, everyone. Please listen to the story Chased by Spirits, my family's paranormal encounter. I grew up in this really tiny town called Cleveland, Utah. The house was known as the very first post office in this really small town when Utah was founded. It was so old that when we did some renovations on the house, we would cut into it and see that it was logs on the inside. That's how old it was. It was an old log post office. My mom and dad decided to create a bedroom in the attic space upstairs. They cut a hole in the ceiling and built these really rickety, steep kind of stairs that went up into this little attic space. The top right corner of the room would be where the stairs would come up, right at the top of those stairs. In the bottom right corner was my bed, up against the wall, right in that corner, right there across the room. In the bottom left corner would be my sister's bed, and then in the top left corner was my brother's bed. I used to see this really dark shadow every night. I would wake up in the middle of the night. Somebody was in the room with me watching me. I would open my eyes, and there would be this dark shadow standing over by my brother's bed. Staring down at him, it was the shape of a man, but it was just a really dark shadow. That would stand there. It would move from my brother's bed, and it would just float across the room, standing over the top of my sister's bed watching her. If I felt myself waking up, I would keep my eyes closed and wait for my brother to move, or wait for my sister to move, and then I would open my eyes. Then he would be standing right by me, staring down at me, watching me sleep. I was so scared I would take all of my stuffed animals, put them all the way around me, and then I'd take the biggest stuffed animal that I had, and I'd put it right over the top of me and tuck it in to make it look like. The stuffed animal is the one sleeping in the bed. I think around in my teenage years, we moved out of that house, and I didn't have any other experiences growing up until later in life when I met my husband. We had all of our kids at that time, and he was stationed in the Air Force, and he got deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. He got deployed to Korea for a year. One of the funny things about me and my husband, we were really into the TV show Ghost Hunters. There was this one episode where they went to the Stanley Hotel. It's the actual hotel that Stephen King himself was staying in when he had those experiences. That scared him so much that he wrote the book, The Shining. This hotel is over 100 years old in Estes Park, Colorado. It's gorgeous. On this episode, they decide that they're going to split up into these separate rooms in the hotel that are known for the most paranormal activity. In the hotel, one of them is on the 4th floor, room 412. Back to me and my husband. My husband is deployed to Iraq. I want to surprise him with something. Just pretty cool for him coming home. He's been gone for 6 months. I decided I was going to book us a stay at the Stanley Hotel so that we can go investigate ghosts. I decided to book that exact room 412. We drive to the Stanley, and you walk into this hotel, and there's this big staircase. It goes up the center, and then it splits off to the right and the left, on both sides, and you can go up to the other rooms. Next to the staircase, it has this really awesome, super old elevator, that is, one of those metal elevators that you have to close the gate on. Old, rickety, and really loud. We get our key for the room, so we get in the elevator and we go upstairs. Step off the elevator, and the room that is haunted is right next to that elevator. We get in the room and go check out the closet. This closet is 100 years old, full hard wood. It's got one of those really old doorknobs on it that are really hard to turn. It's super heavy. On the backside of the closet is that elevator. We check that out. We check the room out. It was really pretty. It had a really old bathroom in it, the really super old Victorian sink with on the inside. We decided to go get some dinner and walk around the hotel for the rest of the evening until bedtime. So nothing happened to us that night. When we were walking around checking out the hotel, and we took the tour. The tour guide was this really cool old guy that had actually done the tour for Ghost Hunters. When they came, he was their tour guide. We noticed that on our tour. The guy goes right up to the room we're staying in, stood outside of the door, and sit there and tell the stories about what happens in there. How people have lost things. Me and my husband are just sitting there thinking, yeah, we're staying in this room tonight. We even told the people that were on the tour with us. We're like, yeah, this is our room. We're going to stay in there. You guys want to look in there? And they were all pretty excited to go in and check out the room. And we ended the tour and went to eat dinner. And then we went back up to the room. And it was time for bed. We decided that we were going to go and take a shower. Together, we're in the bathroom, talking about how nothing's happened to us. It doesn't seem very creepy. There was 3 bulbs in this one light fixture above the bathroom sink. As soon as we were talking about this happening, the light bulbs all shattered. We got out of the shower and called downstairs. I told the lady at the desk what had happened. She said that they were going to send somebody up to come and take care of it. Things like that happen all the time in that room. I just don't know what could have caused that. They came up, they cleaned it up, they left the room, and me and my husband get into bed. And we're laying there, and I'm trying to go to sleep. This bed is facing the closet. So if you're sitting up in bed, you're looking right at the closet. I get this really dark, heavy feeling. There is something in this room. I open my eyes. I look up. Right above the bed is a fan. A ceiling fan? And right next to the ceiling fan, there is this woman floating there. She had a really long, dark hair. I'm looking at her. I start grabbing my husband's arm, shaking him, and I'm like, "Honey, do you see her? She's right there." And I'm hyperventilating. He wakes up, sits right up, and he's like, "Where? Where?" And I'm like, "She's right there in front of us." At that point, she starts moving towards me. And I take a breath and I'm like, "Hi." She stops, tips her head sideways. We laid down to go back to sleep, and I could not go to sleep. The morning after, we went downstairs to go tell the people that I had an experience. There's a tour guide there. And I tell her what had happened to me last night. And she kind of just, "Yeah, that happens all the time." It seemed like she didn't believe me, didn't take me seriously. We decided we were going to go look around the town and check out the hotel more. It's pretty big. It's got a few outbuildings too. We spent the day just being tourists. We get back to the hotel. My husband decides what he's going to do. He grabs this little L, no smoking sign that is sitting on top of the dresser, and he's going to put it right in front of the closet door. Slide it right under it just in case something happens. We go to sleep, and nothing else happens that night. The next morning, the closet door is closed, but the little LS sign was out in the middle of the floor. I'm feeling really uneasy about staying in this hotel and room because we had one more night there. I call my mom. I'm bawling. I don't want to stay here. And my husband's being a sweetheart, sitting there telling me it's going to be okay. We just got one more night. Let's just stay here. And I said, "Okay, we'll just stay," because it was paid for that night. Actually, nothing happened to us. We just woke up and left to go back home. I would absolutely stay at the Stanley Hotel again. The hotel was beautiful. The food was amazing. From their little old-fashioned restaurant. And the rooms were really comfortable. Really scary, but really comfortable. I would not stay on the 4th floor again. Not at all, not in any of the rooms on the 4th floor. Forget it. Throughout our marriage, we have had quite a few paranormal, inexplicable things that have happened. After we went and stayed at the Stanley Hotel, we had moved out of the house that we were staying. At the time, we moved on to base housing at Hill Air Force Base. Cabinet doors would open and close. You would hear whispers or voices throughout the house. When I was in my room laying on the bed, I would be reading, and right above the book, I would see this little boy's head just quickly dash past the bottom of the bed. One other instance. Me and my husband were laying in our bed watching TV. All of a sudden, all of the stuff that was in there, our bathroom, fell off of the shelves into the bathtub. Another time that I was laying in bed, all of a sudden, I felt these little steps stepping next to me, from my feet all the way up to my head. And I turned and I looked, and there was nothing there. We decided that we wanted to name this little ghost. And I'm like, how about we name him Billy? At that exact same time, my husband said that in his head popped the name Billy. After this house, we had moved off a base. It was Halloween, and we felt this ghost presence had followed us. Because same thing started happening in this other house. I took my kids to go see my mom for Halloween. While we were there, I was on the phone talking to my husband, and all of a sudden he says, there was a little boy that just ran across the floor, down the bed, out of the corner of my eye. The kid ran across the room. We're sitting there talking about it, and then all of a sudden you hear in the living room the sound of one of my Halloween decorations go off. this Halloween decoration. It was broken, the motion active part of it was busted, and it was an old gravestone that would crack open and scream at you. The only way for it to go off was for somebody to push it. We moved to Montana. We had a bunch of things happen in that house. My children saw these things. My son Lincoln, he is very sensitive. A couple of days ago, I was in my room. My son's girlfriend. I was going to show her something on my phone. I was walking down my hallway, passing the kitchen, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my son standing in the kitchen. In front of the sink, his back was to me. I thought, okay, I'm going to go show Lincoln first. When I turned to look into the kitchen, he's not there. He is not there. There is nobody there. He comes walking in through the family room. In the back door, I explained to him. This ghost, or mimic, or whatever this was, looked just like him. I have no idea what that was. But it scared the crap out of me. That's the first time something's happened to me, personally, in this house. I'm hoping nothing else happens here. I'm almost over the whole ghost thing. Haha, balding. We have had other situations where we would be sitting out on the porch. We live up in Willow, Alaska. It's a really tiny town in the middle of the forest. We have neighbors that aren't very close to us. We would be sitting out on the porch, and you would hear strange howls, moans, and growls over in that forest. Over there, across the lake, we're avid hunters. We know what it sounds like when a moose is in heat. Just doesn't sound anything like that. Me and my son and his friends, we always talk about shapeshifters up here all the time. Skinwalkers is a big deal in Alaska. A skinwalker can take certain forms of people or things. I don't know if it could have possibly been something like that. I can't tell you. I really have no idea what it could possibly have been. I don't know if it's the places that we've lived in, or if it's because my side of the family, is so sensitive to ghosts, or if it's Lincoln himself. If he attracts these things coming to us everywhere that we've been, in all of the houses that we've lived in. I haven't really been very scared, even though we've had these experiences happen to us. Every time I'm thinking that we're in a new place, it's going to be great. There's nothing going to happen. Then something happens. You can share your story with us over at True Scary Storycom, and to listen without ads and support the show at the same time. Visit scaryplus.com. If you're following the show, I'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Everyone, see you soon. Everyone, please listen to the story, Voices in the Night. I was living with my mom and stepdad at the time. In their house, me and my mom. We were going through a period where we were kind of just lost with our religion. And spirituality, we had always been spiritual. But at this time, we both just felt a disconnect from everything. That's when everything started to manifest. The first incident was with one of my friend. We were on the porch one night, talking about how the summer had started, how we had just graduated. All of a sudden, we hear someone walking out the front door. So we look up. We see my mom. We assume she's taking out the garbage or doing something in the garden or something like that. We go back to talking, and not even a minute later, we hear the front door open again. We see my mom. We were looking at each other in disbelief. She asked, "What's wrong?" We almost scream at her like, "How did you get out here so fast?" What happened? She kept denying and be like, "No, I was not out here. I was inside. I was in the kitchen. We just ignored it. Maybe it was just our eyes. or our minds playing a trick on us. 4 days later, my friend was over again. This time, we were in my room. I was on my phone, not really paying attention, but I was listening to what she was saying. All of a sudden, she went silent. I look up quickly. She has this mortified look on her face. I ask her what's wrong. What happened? She's sitting on the foot of the bed, looking at the edge, and she won't say anything. I finally look to see where she's looking at. I see a dent. Someone was putting pressure on the bed, or sitting on the bed. I was confused. 2 weird things have happened this week. That night, everyone had gone to sleep. My friend had left. It was probably around 1:32. I was thirsty, so I went downstairs to go fill up my water bottle. It was in my bedroom, the bathroom. And the bathroom was facing the bottom of the stairs. I walked 2 steps to the stairs. I'm about to walk down. I see this lady at the bottom of the stairs. She's 6 foot, maybe even taller. She took up most of the wall. She had dark hair, and she had this white dress. It had frills at the bottom and a short sleeve. I ran back into my room, closed the door. The next morning, I bring it up to my mom, and I tell her, "There's something going on in our house. I don't know what's going on." She brushes it off. She's like, "No, it's just our ancestors, don't worry. You'll be fine." In my gut, I knew that wasn't the situation. A few days later, after my mom and I talk about this, and she brushes me off, it's maybe 2:30, closer to 3 this time. I'm downstairs in the kitchen. Our kitchen was attached to a hallway, that LED to the front door. I was in the kitchen, and something was just telling me to look behind me. I look, and I see the woman from a couple nights ago. I turn away, quickly, look back, and she's gone. I was cooking something, and I left it all on the stove. I ran upstairs. I was terrified. The next morning, my mom's like, "What happened? You left everything downstairs. Something's going on." And I'm like, "I told you, something's in the house." She says if something was here, I would be able to see it, or I'd be able to feel it. There's nothing here, trust me. It's just one of our ancestors. They're protecting us. I know it's something else, but she won't listen, so I try and forget about it again. One night, it was 3 a.m. I heard someone walking past my room. My parents, they're both. Not the type of people who would leave their room at night. They'd only really go to the bathroom. They wouldn't go downstairs for water or anything. Something just told me to go check on what it was. So I walk out my room. I see my mom walking down the stairs. In a quiet voice, I start saying, "Mom." I call her name 5 or 6 times as I'm doing that. I'm walking down the stairs trying to get closer to her when I am 1 step away from her, about to touch her. She turns around. I see her eyes. That's not my mom. The eyes were sunken in. You could tell it had no soul. I sprint up the stairs back to my room. I don't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I'm so spooked. I finally tell my mom, "You may not believe me, but something is in this house. We need to do something." She's like, "We can go see someone. They'll talk to us." My stepdad. He was friends with this man who was a babalawo, a priest of this religion called Aruba. We go to this man's house. He starts to do the consultation. My mom starts screaming and crying, wailing, screaming at the top of her lungs. I look beside her. She's pale. She's screaming. Her hair is in front of her face. I don't know what's going on. I leave the room. I can hear her screaming from outside. 15 minutes later, she finally stops the babble out. tells me to come back in the room. He starts explaining to us what happened. My mom, she let something into the house. This spirit, she was a woman who had committed suicide. She was depressed after losing her child in the house. He starts to ask my mom, "Can you think of something that you may have gotten, like from a thrift store? Something that may have history?" She remembers that she was cleaning the basement, and something was drawing her to the back corner. There was this desk was really heavy behind it. There was this door. In it, there was a bunch of heirlooms from the original owners, and their family, all their stuff was in this cubby. When my mom went in that room, she found this lamp or vase kind of thing. She took it out and she put it in our living room. The Babalao, he realized, that lamp is what brought this woman to our house. As soon as that lamp came in our house, all these things started happening. My mom's energy completely changed. She went from being so energized to always wanting to sleep and always being so tired and so negative. She wasn't sleeping either. She was staying up until 3:30 every morning. Even my stepdad thought she was acting weird. He said that her personality had completely changed. The Babalao, he tells us, "I know what to do. I know how to get her back to the lamp." He does some things in our basement, some religious sacrifice or something. He eventually bounces her back to this lamp phase. That night, we threw it in the graveyard because he said that would be best, just as a precaution, to make sure it's away from our house. That night was the last time we ever saw or heard from that spirit again. And it wasn't the only time. My mom had invited something in never on purpose, in a house before this house. When my mom and my dad first got divorced, she had got this spirit board that she used with the pendulum. First, she started talking to people who she thought was her spiritual guides, guardian angels. They were telling her things she wanted to hear. "We'll be here to protect you. You'll have more luck and love. We'll make sure to protect your daughter. Your daughter's going somewhere in the future." My mom, she was obsessed with it. Every day she was doing it. Over time, the messages just started getting super negative. One day, they told her, "We're gonna kill you. We're gonna burn the house down. We're gonna kill your daughter. We're gonna burn her in her sleep." At this time, my mom and I, we were getting into accidents. I was hit by a car. She had almost been hit by multiple cars. Dogs were attacking her out of nowhere. One time, our neighbor's dog, he was on a leash attached to the porch, and he just ripped out of it, and he ran across the street, jumped on her, and attacked her. Multiple dogs were doing that at the time, and we didn't really know what was going on. All we knew was that my mom was getting these messages, and it was dangerous. She decided to go back to Portugal, where she's from, to get advice from her family. She went to a medium there. She looked in her eyes, and she said, "Where is your soul? Your soul is at the back of you. Your soul's supposed to be in front of you. It's at the back of you. There's so much darkness around you. It's going to harm you and my mom at this point." She goes to see another person, just to make sure. To validate, the lady says the same thing. "There's so much darkness around you. What did you do? Did someone do something to you?" My mom finally comes back. We move in with one of my friends and his dad. My mom just had to get me out of that house. She was terrified that something bad was going to happen. During all this period, too, I was having bad dreams. I was seeing dreams with blood on the wall. I had started having suicidal thoughts, and I was 10 at the time. so I wasn't even thinking of any of that at that age. And I just suddenly started having these thoughts. When my mom and I moved to my friend's house, start using the spirit board again. His wife had died. She had also committed suicide when she was using the spirit board. The wife was telling her, like, if you don't get out of my house, I'm gonna burn the house down. At this point, my mom's like, we have nowhere to go, we have to move. We move in with my now stepdad for a few days. We're looking for a place. And my mom goes to the last medium she goes to before we move out. They tell her, you have opened a portal. You using that spirit board opened a portal. And you let something in that's trying to harm you. And my mom realized that she had messed up. That week we packed our bags, moved to a new house. My mom kept in touch with the lady who lived upstairs, who was our landlord, the man who lived there after us. He lived there for maybe 2 weeks, and he apparently went crazy, packed his bags and left. Even the lady had to move out. No one could live there after that. My mom had let something in, but it had attached itself to the place after. She has completely stopped doing that. The religion we are in now doesn't really focus on that. We don't really talk to spirits in that way. She hasn't done anything like that for the past couple of years. Thankfully, everything's calmed down. If you have a scary story that you want to share, head on over to True Scary Story. Come and fill out the form. And if you want to support the show and listen completely ad-free, head on over to Scary Plus. Come or check out the Scary Plus links in your app. Right now, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon, everyone. See you soon, everyone. Please listen to the story Message Through the Board. This story happened in 2014 in Murrieta, California. I worked at a grocery store. A couple of my co-workers had gone to this old mining town near Joshua Tree, then to these old gold mines. They brought a Ouija board with them and were able to communicate with some miners that had passed in the area at the time. I was very skeptical about these kinds of things. I was like, oh, if you guys are ever gonna do it again, I'd be really interested to see what that's like and experience that for myself. A couple weeks later, one of the girls that owned the Ouija board invited me to go with her to her grandmother's grave. We went to the cemetery around sunset and set up a blanket. Just a nice little area on top of her grave. The girl that's grandmother's grave we were at, LED the whole thing. Me and one other girl were there as well. There were 3 of us total. We are sitting there. We all 3 had our fingers on the planchette. I had mine barely touching it, hovering it, because I'm skeptical. We sign on the Ouija board. We go to say hello. That's what she told us we're supposed to do. You sign on. We go to say hello. She starts asking questions. Is there anyone here with us? We didn't really get any responses. The planche kept moving from T and to U. T to U. It kept going back and forth very slowly. That was the only response we got the whole time. We sat there for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, just seeing if anything else would happen. Nothing else happened, so we gathered up our gear. They had the idea to go to this, what is referred to as the Haunted Mill. That's in Murrieta. It's a spooky place that teenagers go at night, just to get spooked out. I had been a couple times to drive by, but they were like, let's go do the Ouija board over there. They thought we'd get some sort of response. We go over to the mill. It's pitch black out. The mill had been vandalized and broken into a lot over the years. There was a chain link fence and barbed wire on the top. We didn't bother going inside of it, but we thought just merely being in its vicinity was enough. We set up the Ouija board and a little blanket across the street. There was a dirt field across the street. It was just us. dirt field, and the mill. All three of us had her finger on the plancher. We sign on to say hello. The girl who was leading asked if there was anybody with us. This time, the plancher went to yes. She asked a few other questions. One of them was, "What is your name?" It started to spell my grandfather's name, which is not a common name in the States. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. And it started to spell my last name. My last name is Dutch and very hard to spell. Even people that have known me for years have a hard time spelling my last name. I immediately was going into fight or fight mode. I was really scared, I figured. The girls I was with probably didn't know my grandfather's name. At first, I thought they were pulling a prank on me or something. I looked at them and was like, oh, this is my grandfather's name that it just spelled. My friend continued to ask questions. She said, "Do you have something that you want to say to Molly?" It went to yes again. "What's your message from Molly?" It spelled Getready. I said, "Get ready." She said, "For what?" It spelled DE, a TH death. I immediately was having an out-of-body experience. We signed off. My two friends were very scared. They grabbed their stuff, ran off to their car. I had been sitting crisscross, applesauce the whole time. I went to stand up. My legs were numb. I fell into this ditch that was there. I lost my car keys. Having a panic attack, I look up and my friends are at their cars. They're getting ready to go. I couldn't find my car keys. So I pull my phone out, get my flashlight. I'm looking for my keys. I finally find them. I run into my car and drive off and don't look back. We let each other know when we got home. Over the next couple of weeks, we were checking in with each other a lot to see how everyone was feeling. We were all really freaked out by it. In the months after that, even years, I have asked them repeatedly if they've ever had another experience like that, or if they were possibly playing a prank on me, and they've never owned up to it if they were. But that's something that has scared me. It's been almost 10 years. It's still something that I think about. From what I experienced, I don't think either of them messed with a Ouija board. Again, after that, the logical side of me wants to say that they were messing with me, but I think it would have been really hard for them to find my Dutch grandfather's name somewhere, and to know that that's something that would scare me. I went in with the title of a skeptic, and I feel like maybe I was targeted because of that. I would say, know what you're getting yourself into. Listen to stories like these before you do something like that. I haven't been to that specific area because I don't live there any longer, but I in general like abandoned places, spooky places. I actually told my dad the story within the last couple years. The grandfather mentioned in the story is my dad's dad. I never told him. I didn't want him to have a weird memory of his dad after hearing it, but I wanted to share it with him. He adamantly is like, my dad would never try to scare you like that, and would never tell you to get ready for death in a negative, scary way. If he had said that, he would have meant it, as in, live your life to the fullest. Always prepare, be prepared. That you don't always have the promise of tomorrow. That's giving me a piece about the story too. I don't think it was my grandfather. I never did research into this because I'm too scared. But one of my friends that I experienced this with, she had done some research into demons and spirits. She said there is a demon that will imitate relatives, with repeating letters, like we had experienced at the cemetery. If that's the case, I'm really glad we signed off when we did, and didn't do it again. This experience just gave me a really well-rounded view of this kind of thing. I don't consider myself a skeptic or a full believer. I put it into the category of something unexplained, something I might never know the answer to. Don't leave just yet. We have 3 stories today. Have you listened to them yet? They're up and available now as separate episodes. You can share your own story with me over on scarystory.com for a chance to have it featured on an upcoming episode and to listen ad-free. Try out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com. Completely free for 14 days. You can also find the button somewhere on your app right now. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story Baby Monitor. My name is Sean, and I've actually been on the show before. I told a story about when I experienced some paranormal type situations in my childhood homes. The experiences had dwindled off for most of my early adulthood until around 2020. July of 2020, I lost my mother. Shortly after the COVID pandemic had started to peak, my mother took a turn for the worst and passed away unexpectedly. Shortly after that, I found out that I was pregnant. This was not something that me or my boyfriend had planned. It was very unexpected, and I kind of took it as a gift, kind of from my mom, because we had been talking before she passed away about how excited she was at the idea of becoming a grandma. And I told her, I don't even know if I can have kids. So we'll see what happens. And then, shortly after she passed away, I found out I was pregnant. We were in a 1-bedroom apartment at this point. And we decided that it was time to try to find ourselves. Actual house, a space where we would be able to grow as a family. And I started house shopping. We were looking for houses for months. But then, one came on the market. That happened to be on the same street that my childhood home that I had originally experienced a lot of the paranormal activities was on. I decided to go take a look around. There wasn't anything particularly special about it yet. There was something that drew me to it. I can't explain what it was, but there was just an energy in the house that pulled me to decide to try to convince my husband that this is the house that we need to buy. He was not a fan, but when it came down to it, everything seemed good about it. There wasn't, a whole lot that had to be done to the house. Before we moved in, so we decided to put down our offer, and we got the house. December of 2021, we moved into the home, and that first night, things got weird. I actually can't recall entirely what happened. That night, it happened to me, and I was in a state that I can't really explain. So, I'm gonna let my husband, Gordon, take over for a moment. The first night in the house was a hectic one. Unpacked everything as we could, and we were decided. Let's just go to sleep. We're all exhausted. Let's just go to sleep and relax. And we're laying there, we finally pass out. Felt like minutes. Early morning comes and I feel this jolt on my chest. Like something hit me. I look over to my right. My girlfriend at the time is right next to me. She looks funny. Her eyes are open, but she's not really saying anything. She's kind of just looking at me, and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's not responding. It was strange for a second or two. And I was just trying to, nudge her and stuff. And all of a sudden, she's just starts speaking in tongues almost, saying different names I didn't recognize. She was speaking multiple languages all at once. It's a very strange situation. And I'm thinking, okay, Maybe she's having like a stroke or something. I wasn't even sure. So I'm like, okay, so try to wake her up or something. So I'm just trying to wake her up, and she's just flapping her arms around and yelling and trying to get my attention, even though I'm literally staring at her. It felt like she was almost possessed or something, like she was like being taken over by something. This is early in the morning too. Sun's barely coming up, so I'm trying to hold her up. I physically had to hold her up with my shoulder in the bed to try to keep her up without laying down, trying to shove apple juice into her throat. And finally, as I get probably a cup and a half down her throat, she's finally kind of saying English words. The weirdest part is, she had no recollection of anything. We had full different language conversations, trying to decipher what we were trying to say to each other. But she was just only halfway there, and her eyes were just glazed over. One of the weirdest situations I've ever experienced in my life. The weirdest part about it was that the only thing that I can recall was feeling like I was freezing, and I was trying to tell Gordon, "I'm so cold, Gordon. I'm so cold," but the words wouldn't come out. And that's all I remember from that experience. I finally kind of came to. And he told me that that had all happened. I thought I was just having like a bad dream. And then from there, I just proceeded to experience other weird events. One in particular that still sits very heavy with me was, we had probably been in the house 3 or 4 months. At this point, I had moved my son into his room. He was around 8 or 9 months old, and that was really hard for me, because when we were in the apartment, we had one of those side-sitting cribs, and he was right there next to me. And the doctor was like, "Well, you need to get him in his own room, in his own crib, and just being in this new environment." It was difficult for me. So there were a lot of nights where I would wake up very easily from like the slightest noise, the slightest creak in the floor, anything like that. And my husband is the complete opposite. He could sleep through an explosion. One night around the summertime, we were sleeping, and I was woken up very abruptly by a large banging. Sound like something had fallen downstairs. I didn't get freaked out too much at first. I assumed maybe one of my pets knocked something down. We have a couple of cats and had a dog at the time. But then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. They didn't sound like paws or anything like. They were like loud boots, stomping on the creaky wood of my stairs. I'm sitting up in bed at this point. I'm trying to wake up Gordon. He's not reacting. And I'm like panicking, because I'm thinking somebody broke into my house. Since we're in an older house, there's about an inch or so of space between the floor and our door, so you can see people's feet and things. I saw a pair of feet boots settle in front of the door, and I am fully panicked at this point. I can't get my husband to wake up. He's snoring, having a great time, and I'm like, I'm about to die. And all of a sudden, as things seem to quiet down, my door starts to aggressively shake and shake, like somebody's trying to get in, but they can't figure out how to turn the knob, and the door is slamming and slamming and slamming. And finally, I'm like, Gordon. He wakes up and it stops. I'm crying at this point. I am in tears, begging him to do something, that someone is in the house. Someone's gonna hurt us, someone's gonna hurt our baby. So he gets up in a stupor, goes and opens the door, and there's nobody there. He goes and checks downstairs. Nothing has fallen. Nothing's out of place. To this day, that still sits with me. because there are still times where I will wake up in the middle of the night and I can hear the door jiggling. Not as violent as that first time, but like somebody's trying to figure out how to get into my room. At first, when some of the footsteps started, I put it in my head that maybe it was my mother, keeping an eye on us. She was always like a huge believer in the paranormal. She always believed that the ghosts, or entity, that we were dealing with. In my childhood, homes were my grandmother. She always kind of put it in my head that the people that we care about most stay with us for a while after they're gone. But the way that it behaved in that moment, it didn't feel like something safe. It didn't feel like something that was there for a good reason. As time went on, it seems that whatever this thing is that we're dealing with has taken a liking to my son. So, Alec, my son turned 1. He was just learning how to talk, and he would just like giggle and kind of like whisper to himself in bed. We didn't think too much of it at first, until one particular night. We have this video baby monitor that, when a sound goes off, it'll turn the video on so that you can see into the room. We had it at the time face down, right, so that we could see him in his crib. This particular time, the monitor turned on and I just heard like a grumbling. I couldn't figure out what it was at first. I thought maybe it picked up, like the air conditioner or something in his room. But it was kind of like a brah, brah, brah kind of sound. So I went to look at the monitor, and I see my son just sitting up in his crib, talking to the wall. He's giggling and whispering and having a babbly conversation with something in the wall. And at this point, he wasn't old enough to really be talking so I couldn't ask him about it. But this was something that continued to happen for the last 2 years, where the monitor would pop on and he's sitting up, sometimes asleep, sometimes not talking to someone or something. One particular night when he was around 2.5, he was in a twin bed that we have in a frame that's like on the ground, because we didn't want him to fall out of bed. And this night, the same kind of thing happened where the monitor turned on. There was a weird, scratchy, grumbly sound, and when I went to check Alec, my son was sitting up in the middle of the bed, just staring straight ahead. And I'm looking at him, and I see the room is dark. And yet there was just in the corner of his room, behind his bed, there's just this giant black figure. And I'm thinking I'm seeing things at this point, and I'm getting ready to go up there. I put one foot on the step, and my son looks up at the camera. He goes, "Mommy, Mommy." In that moment, the darkness disappeared, and he just laid back down and went to sleep. I was just frozen on the stairs, not sure if I actually saw what I saw. It's unsettling, because I don't know if whatever this thing is friendly, if it's got a motive, or why it seems to suddenly be attracted to my son. My son's obsessed with ghosts. I'm not sure where he even got the knowledge of ghosts. He asks my husband to play ghosts with him every night. He wants him to put like a sheet over him and go, "Ooh," and like pretend to be a ghost. No idea where he even learned that word. Just this morning, I went in to get him to go to daycare, and he gets up and he goes, "Mommy." Guess what? My friend did exercises with me after Daddy left. I was like, "Who's your friend?" And he just goes, "I don't know." Part of me wants to think that maybe it is my mom watching over him and coming to see him, but the way that whatever this is treated me and treated my husband, it's hard to be confident in something like that. There was a time recently, Alec was in the living room playing. We were cleaning up the kitchen, I had just let the dogs out the back door. I turned my back to where we have like their water bowl, and when I turned back, there was a dead mouse lying next to the water bowl, and I come up to it, and it's a mouse. And so I'm freaking out. I get my husband to come and look at it, and he's like, "This is stiff. This has been dead for a while. It looked like something had spit it up." But my dogs were outside. The only ones that could have possibly had a mouth big enough to transport this thing. We're not in the house. I had my husband throw it out. I go to open the back door to let the dogs back in, and there's another one in the exact same position, in the exact same state, right on the back step of my house. We clean that one up. The next day, there's another one in the exact same spot. I can't explain that either. One time, I was trying to get him out the door, and it got to the point where he was getting very, very upset. And I'm like, "Dude, we've got to go. We've got to go. You have a doctor's appointment. Like, we can't be late." And he got very upset. And he looked at me and he went, "Mommy, no." And as he yelled, "No," my bathroom door slammed shut. I've heard a lot in the past about how, ghosts will react to emotions of the people in the space that they are residing in. So I can't help but wonder if that was the ghost, taking his side to try to get me to leave him alone. But a lot of the times, when there are arguments happening in the house, or my son is throwing a fit, that door will slam. I don't know how to explain it. In my previous story, I had talked about the house that I lived in. It's on the same street, and at that time, when my mom and my aunt were fighting, the lights all shut off and things were slamming. And so part of me feels like it could be the same thing, where it seems like whatever it is reacts when there's a lot of negativity going on in the house, or negative emotions. It doesn't feel the same, if that makes sense. This whole street is just weird. There's been a lot of rumor between neighbors about seeing figures just standing across the street, looking into windows. Whatever we're all seeing don't seem to be aggressive or threatening, but they're there, watching. So I don't know if I made a mistake moving back here, moving back into this space, where I had once dealt with this stuff before. But that's a genuine fear of mine, and a genuine fear that I have now accidentally passed. Whatever this is from me to my son. If you haven't listened to it yet, you can find Sean's story by clicking on the link in the description of this episode, and if there, the story that you want to share with us. Head on over to truescarystory.com and fill out the form ad. Free. Listening is also available for our Scary Plus members. Links to everything are in the description of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story Ghosts of the Beach House a Family's Encounter. Growing up, I had a lot of paranormal experiences. They were super subtle sensitivity to energies, noticing things in the home, hearing things when I was growing up in Fredericksburg, Virginia, if you're unfamiliar with the place. There was a lot of battles that happened. In Fredericksburg, Virginia, there's a lot of paranormal activity. They do a lot of Civil War, Revolutionary War reenactment. My grandfather was a home inspector. He would take me on a lot of his home inspections, and he would tell me scary stories about the property. We would hear footsteps, and one time he was in a foyer of an old colonial home. A pot flew across. A lot of the times his equipment was moved. One time I was with him, we came back inside the house. I looked down on the floor. The door was open. There was 2 muddy handprints, and 1 muddy footprint for about 6 or 7 steps, as if somebody was crawling, because they didn't have a leg anymore. All of this was fun, and games for me. Until I had the experience I'm about to tell you about. It happened a couple of years ago, in a different location, Topsail Island, North Carolina. Topsail Island, it was a massive hub for pirates. People think that they can still see Blackbeard's ship on the horizon. People also think that it might be the last resting place of Blackbeard's treasures. Topsail Island has a significant amount of energy. I had none of this information. When my family booked a vacation in Topsail, they were renting the beach house. When my family booked this vacation, I did travel all the way from Pennsylvania. Down to Topsail, I was already pretty tired. The drive was a couple of hours. For 6, I think my boyfriend at the time. He picked me up, drove me all the way down. I slept a little bit in the car, but I was still really groggy. When I arrived at the beach house, it was not scary at all. It was a white house on stilts. The area surrounding was very swampy, but nothing that alerted me to anything. It was about 2-ish o'clock in the morning. I had just woken up. I was super groggy. I wasn't aware of what was going on. I'm locked on the door. My grandfather. He opened up the door. They both were whispering. They were tired. No one else was in the house. We said our greetings. It was cordial. Come in, okay? Thank you. Let's go to bed. My grandparents requested that my boyfriend and I sleep in separate rooms. They pointed me to the back room where I would sleep. It was through the kitchen. His room was closer to the front entrance and had a loft bedroom upstairs. I remember going into that room and feeling the heaviest weight I have ever felt in my entire life. This should have sent off some sort of ringer in my head, but it didn't. I was so tired. It was this really dense, thick smog kind of feeling. The feeling that hits you in the center of your chest, on your back, on your shoulders. I completely ignored it, and I had no other thoughts in my mind. Just unpack your stuff and get to bed. And I was unpacking these. These thoughts were not my own. I felt the energy of my past relatives. My great-grandmother was there. My great-grandfather was there. My great-aunt, they were there to protect me, to take care of me, and I just ignored it. I picked the bed, and that was closest to the back patio. I fell asleep. Enough time had passed. We are creeping into the 3 o'clock hour. We are creeping into the witching hour. I don't even know how long I was asleep. I was woken up by a pressing into the bed. I was not shook. I was not nudged. Nothing fell. I was pressed. Like somebody had put their hands on either side of my chest and pressed me into the bed. It was constant. It was rhythmic and very heavy. I could feel the sides of the pillow curl around my head. My head was being pressed into the bed. Of the pillow was touching the sides of my face. I've had sleep paralysis before. This is not sleep paralysis. I was hit with that overwhelming feeling. My relatives are there. It was a chatter. It was very noisy in my head. I remember being unable to move. I opened my eyes. It was an operation. 6 inches from my face, it was the blackest black, but also had outlines I could tell was a woman. Her eyes were sunken in. They were pitch black. Her hair was floating. It was gray. It was coming out at all ends like Medusa, like she was in water. Her mouth was open like a snarl, latching onto somebody wide open. Her teeth were all sharp. She had white markings on her face, 2 that were going vertical, 1 on her forehead to her hairline, 1 down her chin, and 2 horizontal on the sides of her cheeks, as if somebody had put their fingers in paint and smeared them across their cheeks. This encounter seemed to go on forever. It felt like time had stopped. I was absolutely paralyzed. I remember sitting there in complete and utter fear, staring at this figure. I remember feeling like my breath was taken out of my chest. She was pulling it from me. I remember trying to scream and not being able to. I knew that. My own essence was starting to get compromised. All of a sudden, at once, I remembered that what you do in these moments is you remind the entity that you are the one that's alive. I shut my eyes and I started screaming. I'm alive, you are not. I'm here, you're not wanted here. All the while, I felt like my family was there. They were fighting this with me. It was completely chaotic and not of my own imagination. Suddenly, she was gone. The chatter stopped. The pressing stopped. I could breathe again. I could talk again. I ran into my boyfriend's room at the time. I remember saying to him, I either had a very vivid dream or I just saw a ghost. He had also had his own apparition that he experienced at a different time and a different location, and he went, oh, okay. Well, let's go to bed. I remember going to bed that night and not believing it. The next morning, I woke up and I told my family. I was very vague about it. They joked about it and went, oh, maybe it's haunted. And I was like, okay, maybe, and we moved on with our day. They didn't take me seriously at all. Even though my grandfather had had experiences in his past, as well as my grandmother. She even captured an apparition in Fredericksburg with her camera sitting in a pew. My family is relatively sensitive, but we have never dabbled with anything that was dark, deliberately messing with us in any way. We went out, learned all about the pirates and tops and everything. That night, we as a family were playing Monopoly. The kitchen table was right next to my bedroom door. It was just fine. We had lots of laughs. And my grandmother said, okay, I'm gonna go to bed. And my boyfriend was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to bed. It's just my grandfather and I in the kitchen, cleaning up the board. He goes to my door. He stops and he stares. He looks back at me and says, you're right. The pressure changes at night. And I went, okay. Well, I'm not going to spend the night there. I'm not going to sleep in that room. Never again. He went, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And I spent the night within my boyfriend's room, who had a twin bed. It wasn't an ideal situation. The next morning I wake up, and I hear my grandmother from the top of the stairs say in almost a joking way, Baka saw the ghost. And Baka is the name that I call my grandfather. I went, what? She was joking. But my grandfather, he was really shaken. He comes downstairs. He says at about 3 a.m, he was woken up by being pressed into the bed. This is a detail that I did not tell him. When he woke up, he kept his eyes closed and he turned over to my grandmother, who was to his right. He said annoyingly, Pat, why? Why are you waking me up? She's still kind of asleep. Doug, I'm not doing that. In that moment, he hears his wife's voice next to him. He opens his eyes. He sees a tall, black, shadowy figure in a top hat, sitting in the chair at the foot of the bed. He said to her then, who is sitting in that chair? When she woke up, he turned to her. It was gone. I decided to sleep in the same room as my grandmother. I remember having the light on the whole time and having this unmistakable pressure surrounding me. constantly like chatter in my head, static around me. The energy was off, and my eyes were fixated on the foot of the bud. The moment that 3 a.m. passed, I turned over, looked at the clock, and I think it was 3:05, 3:10. Suddenly, I was able to fall asleep. We told the owners of this house what had happened. They said, "Oh, you've never had any ghost encounters before." So I put it to bed, whatever that was. That was very much real. It became my ghost story. During COVID, I was flipping through some streaming service. There was some documentary style on sleep paralysis. They showed a picture of a sleep paralysis demon. Called the Old Hag, it was an artistic rendering, I think done over 100 years ago, and I froze. It's exactly what I had seen that night. There are other renderings of the old tag. That didn't quite fit the bill, but this one did. The sunken black eyes, the open mouth, the vampiric teeth, the floating gray hair, and the pressing on the chest, and it sent shivers up and down my spine. I found out that there are predominantly 2 sleep paralysis demons that have been known throughout centuries, throughout millennia, and across the world. Everybody's stories are exactly the same. It is pressing into the bed, stolen breath, something staring at you. The old hag sits on your chest, and the other one is called the Shadow Man. Shadow Man stands at the foot of your bed. He's oftentimes seen wearing a top hat. Putting this together, I realized I had seen the old hag. And the following night, my grandfather had seen the Shadow Man. We had no previous experience or knowledge of this. We were just 2 people that have had paranormal experiences before. Maybe these demons latched onto us that night because we were open. I have made certain that I am not as vulnerable as I was. That night, I found out that some people have had recurring visits from these demons, and it often happens because they are so vulnerable. I don't know if it was just age, but I have been way more receptive to the paranormal. I can see things, apparitions, and Elisa's story continues right after this. Stay with us. My ex-partner I was living with a couple of years ago, he was a big skeptic when I told him this. He would shrug it off. One night, I was really trying to understand, what is this? Is this something that I have now? What is this? I was woken up by him screaming in bed, shrieking. I turn over, I see him. He pushed himself up on the bed, trying to get away from something. He was staring at the door. He told me I saw a tall, black, shadowy figure standing in the doorway with a hat on. I don't know if he experienced the Shadow Man at that one point, but ever since then, he's only had brief experiences with hearing his grandfather, his grandmother. One time he saw his grandfather in a car door, but he's really had nothing significant since then. There was an apparition attached to an old, vintage vanity of mine that I've had for years. It was an elderly woman. This person was in my house at the same time. We looked up and he went, "It's a woman." Older woman, tall. I went, "White hair, Victorian." He went, "Yes. She's good, though she's just lost." I have actually been able to help a friend who lost her husband, unfortunately, to suicide. This was completely unintentional. I was chatting with her at a pool party. She started opening up to me, and suddenly her past husband was there. I was able to tell her things about him that she had not told me. I knew where he was touching her and how he was touching her. She started breaking down and crying. I don't know if that experience with that demon changed something in me that made me more open. But you bet I sage my house every day. I don't ever sleep on my back anymore. I just don't want to recreate that night. But it does seem that once these sleep demons enter your life, you become a little bit more attuned to the paranormal, I guess. Just had a lot of significant encounters since then. I used to live by an old iron mill, and I watched my dog get spooked by something, and at the same time I felt that pressure. The other night, I watched my other dog, alert to the corner of a room where we have kind of an altar for my deceased dog that just passed. I watched him stare in that corner and alert to it, try to smell the air, and once again, I felt that pressure, but it was positive. When it passed over me, I felt a wind on my face. I just have a lot of these experiences nowadays, that it seems kind of normal. That veil has been thinned in a way. Still to this day, I haven't had any more encounters with her. I don't want to have any more encounters with her. Maybe I wasn't the right kind of energy she wanted to feed off of. People will chalk it up to, oh, you were sleeping, and if you do some research on it, people don't actually know what sleep paralysis is. They don't understand why it happens. If someone has experienced sleep paralysis before, they know that it's completely different than being manipulated and seeing a demon. That was very different. I don't know if I can find that picture, but if you Google old hag demon, somebody put this depiction in a nurse's outfit. It's like blue-purple colored is the hue of the painting, just the way that her mouth is open and her hair is standing on end, and how she's touching whomever she's sitting on. It's very similar to what I experienced. I don't know the origin. We have all of our theories on what demons could be. My personal theory is that demons are spirits that are stuck, that have been stuck for so many years. They become poltergeist and become demons. That's just my personal theory. Whoever the old hag and the shadow man are, they are ancient. They are millennia old. If you do some digging, you can find that there are encounters that people have had that are centuries old all across the globe. For me, that just validates it even further. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? Let me know in the comments or through Instagram. I'll leave my contact information in the description of this episode. I'm on there as Edwin Cove. That's EDWINCOV. And if you have a story that you want to share, head on over to True Scary Story. Communications subscribers, I'll talk to you in the next episode. And thank you, everyone that has tried Scary Plus over on ScaryPlus.com. I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story, The Mistake of Never Saying Goodbye. Despite many warnings, Brooke and her friend decide to play with the Ouija board, a decision they would come to regret. My name is Edwin, and here is Brooke's true scary story. My name is Brooke. My first experience ever with the supernatural happened in Irvine, California at my grandma's house. My grandma still lives in the same house. She bought the house in the mid to late 50s. I was 6 or 7 years old. My mom and I were in the back room, watching Unsolved Mysteries. So it was pretty late at night. The TV was on. I was sitting on my bed. My mom was to the left of the TV doing her eyebrows. Very laid-back night watching the show together. All of a sudden, the sound in the room disappeared. There was no TV, no nothing. You could have heard a pin drop. I zoned out on the wall out of nowhere. This huge gust of wind blew all of my hair back. I look at the door to the bedroom. There is this huge shadow figure. No facial features, but it was the shape of a human. It was so tall, it almost surpassed the top of the door frame. After a few seconds goes by, it instantly realized that I had seen it. It turns and starts sprinting down the hallway. I jumped up from my bed, I run down the hallway and stop. I just knew not to follow it. All the way to the end of the hallway, out to the door. It makes it to the front door and it disappears. I'm standing completely confused. I go back to my room and it's as if nothing happened. My mom's still doing her eyebrows. The TV is still on. She didn't even ask me about what happened. So it was honestly as if time just stood still. From that point on, I would see things, hear things. We moved around quite a bit when I was growing up. And it didn't matter what house we were in. Something just chose to follow me. I would hear my name being called a lot of the time. It would either sound like my mom, or someone was trying to sound like my mom to get my attention. I would even hear my name in class in elementary school. And of course, as a little kid, you don't want to hear someone calling my name in the middle of class and draw attention to yourself. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, so I kept it to myself a lot of the time. But the experiences never went away. They slowed down once I hit my early teenage years, 11, 12, 13. But they never fully went away. Even to this day, I still experience a shift in the energy in the room and this overwhelming sense of dread. It didn't matter what house we were in. Sometimes it would happen during the day. A lot of times it was at night. Just this overwhelming sense of I'm not alone. Someone is watching me. Fast forward to middle school. I'm 12 years old. We're living in a townhome. Still in Irvine, but out of Grandma's house. Me, my mom and dad, my brother and sister. My parents decide that it's not working, and they tell us that they're getting a divorce. Dad moves out. He has his own place. That doesn't last long. And he ends up back at my grandma's. And he meets my stepmom. They get married. They have my youngest sister. And we move into a house in Northwood, not far from my grandma's house. At all this house. The first time that we did a walkthrough of that house, it didn't feel right to me. Downstairs, no problem. As soon as I went upstairs were my soon-to-be bedroom, my siblings' bedroom, and my dad and stepmom's bedroom was. I just had a feeling of I don't want to be here. This doesn't feel right. I ignored it. We move in. We're going back and forth, spending about half the week with my mom, half the week with my dad and stepmom. Nothing happened at first. It was a lot of feeling again. Dread every time I had to go up into their room, or even just walk past their room. I absolutely hated that feeling. I would ask someone to go up and close their bedroom door. I would avoid even looking down the hallway. If their door was open, it never gave me a good feeling. This was going on for a handful of months, and I felt very fortunate that we moved into the same neighborhood that my best friend at the time was living in. Her house was 2 streets up in the same exact neighborhood. We were spending the night at each other's houses. Every weekend we would alternate and meet at the corner. Okay, whose house are we spending the night at tonight? Few months goes by, I keep having these feelings. I can't shake them. And her and I are having a sleepover at her house. I'm telling her about all these things, how scary it is, and I wish I could figure out what was going on. She laughs and she goes, "Hold on. I have something I want to show you." She goes to her bedroom closet, and she pulls out a Ouija board. I grew up in a very traditional Mexican household. Most of my family are believers. You don't mess with the supernatural, and you absolutely do not mess with Ouija boards, no matter what anyone tells you. It's not worth it. I always knew it was something you avoid, but we were teenagers. A few weeks later, it was my turn to host. Having her over, she brought the Ouija board with her. The light that I would use in my room had a dimmer setting. You could dim it almost all the way down to where it was almost like a very mild candlelight feel. We waited for everybody to go to bed and, of course, picked the absolute worst time. The witching hour, as they call it, to bust out this Ouija board. Her and I are sitting right across from each other. Our knees are almost touching. There's obviously space on either side of us. It's just her, and we have my light all the way on. We're sitting there, she takes it out, explains to me how it works. We both place our hands on the Ouija board. She's like, okay, what do you want to ask it first? Do you have an idea of what could be in the house? Is it an adult? Is it a child? I don't know. Let's just ask it if there's a ghost in our house. She says, okay. We put our hands on the Ouija board. She asks the question. The little piece starts moving. So of course I'm like, okay, you're moving it. This isn't really happening. She starts freaking out, and she's like, no, I'm not moving it, I promise you. It keeps moving all the way to yes. I start panicking. I ask her to stop, and we sit there for a second. Clearly, there's something here. I'm not going crazy. What do I ask it now? She thinks about it for a second, and she goes, why don't you ask its name? We put our hands back on. She asks the question. It slowly moves to GE as it's getting closer to the letter O. My lights dim by themselves. I start accusing her of moving it again. And she's like, no, I promise you I'm not moving it. The lights dimmed on their own. It spells out G-O. George, maybe. We're trying to figure out what this name could be. Going back and forth, we're both a little scared. We put our hands back on the Ouija board. She asks the last question, halfway through it moving. The lights dim again. I feel this overwhelming sense of dread. That same feeling. Every time I walk past my dad and stepmom's room, before I can even say anything to her, there's this sensation between where her and I are sitting. We are not sitting alone. I could very vividly feel the pressure of someone's leg. Against mine, I get up. I run and turn the light all the way back on. She's full panic, eyes wide. Did you feel that I said yeah? What the heck was that? We are completely freaking out. Don't want to wake anybody up. The lights are on. She puts everything away. Went to sleep. Looking back, I realize now, the biggest mistake that we could have ever made is not saying goodbye. We go to sleep, I honestly forget about it. We giggle about it in the morning over breakfast. She goes home, we're back at school Monday. Nothing really happens. Halfway into that week, I get a call from her around dinner time. She's at her mom's. She sounds freaked out on the phone. She's like, hey, have you been feeling anything since our last sleepover? When we used the Ouija board, ever since we used that thing the last couple nights, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, there's somebody in my room. Fast forward to a few nights later. I go upstairs, I get ready for bed, shut all my lights off, get into my bed, pull the covers up, close my eyes, and I start to settle in. Within 5 minutes, there's this ringing in my ears. Wasn't super high-pitched, but enough to make me uncomfortable. I sit up, get a little nervous, and I'm like, okay, you're making it up. Just close your eyes and go back to sleep. I lay down, I get comfortable again. This time, the ringing is louder. Now I feel this pressure on my chest. I tell myself, don't open your eyes. I could feel someone staring at me almost nose to nose. If I open my eyes, it would be right there. The pressure in my chest is getting heavier. I get the courage to sit up and open my eyes. There's nothing there. I had to sleep with my light on that night. And of course, my dad gets up in the middle of the night. And he shuts it off for at least 6 months. Any time that I had to go to my dad's and stay there, that would happen every single night. Unless I kept my light on. I kept getting in trouble for falling asleep, with the light on as soon as the lights would go off. This thing would be right in my face. When I was trying to sleep, I couldn't even use the dimmer anymore. They would shut themselves off. This started happening a lot. I felt so crazy I knew that my dad would be upset if he found out that I brought a Ouija board into his house so I didn't say anything. My friend started experiencing the same thing. A few weeks goes by. I go to spend the night at her house. We are baking, watching movies, having a great time. Her mom goes upstairs to go to sleep. Her and I are alone. Her and I are starting to chat about the things that have been happening and the things we've been feeling. At the house, the only light that's on is the chandelier. She's like, let's grab our stuff. Let's go upstairs. We'll hang out in my room the rest of the night before we go to sleep. She goes up the stairs first, gets to the very top of the first set of stairs, and stops dead in her tracks, staring at the wall. I'm standing at the bottom of the stairs like, what are you doing? Why are you not going to your room? She doesn't turn around. She doesn't move. She doesn't look back at me. Nothing. She just says, don't move. I'm standing there terrified. What are we not moving for? What do you see that I'm not seeing? I slowly turn my head just barely to the left. There is this little boy sitting on the chandelier, legs wrapped around the bottom, staring at her and I. Do we run? Do we walk? What do we do here? I said. Just ignore it if you give it attention. It's only going to get worse. Walk upstairs, don't look over that way again. Her and I start with a walk, and of course, it turns into a run. We're terrified. We get to her room, sweating, freaking out. There's no way that really happened. It didn't. Go spend the night at her house for a few weeks after. That she told me. There was a few other times after that. Incidents that she saw him. I don't know if ignoring it is what helped it go away for her. But after a handful of times, it stopped happening. I had a few more experiences after that. I just thought, this was going to happen for the rest of my life. I'd be in the bathroom getting ready for school. Someone would shake the door violently. I'm alone. There's no one there. Things like that happened for several months afterwards. A few more weeks goes by. My little sister was a baby at the time. It was just me, her, and my stepmom home, alone. She's upstairs falling asleep in her bassinet. An hour goes by, and she starts crying. Something woke her up. I go to look at the monitor. I see a hand gently patting her back. She falls back asleep. I'm like, oh, perfect. I don't need to go up there. My stepmom made it up there as she went back to sleep. She's fine. 2 minutes later, my stepmom walks in the front door from outside. I said, did you just come in from outside? Or were you upstairs with the baby? And she's like, no. I was cleaning out my car. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. I went back and looked at the video later, and of course, there's nothing on there. I have nothing to show for it or to prove it. After a couple days, I started really just trying to visualize what I had seen, to see if I could put together what the hand looked like, or whose hand it could have been. I remember there being this green emerald ring on the middle finger. That's the ring that my grandma wore pretty much every day after that experience. And seeing what I believe was her on the camera, soothing my sister, everything just stopped happening. I was able to sleep normally again. My friend wasn't seeing stuff anymore. I like to think that somehow she paid a visit, not just to see my sister, but to be like, hey, you guys don't belong here, move on. I actually found out from my friend, a few years after all this had happened, that there had been a lot of crime in our neighborhood. Prior to us moving in, there was a park right across from our house, right across the street, that you could see from my bedroom window. I found out a few years later that a man that lived in the neighborhood for several years took his life at that park. I don't know if because our house was in such close proximity to the park, if maybe there was just this bad energy from stuff that had happened there, or from what happened with him lingering in the area. But I can definitely say, I'm still a firm believer that stuff is real. I have not used a Ouija board since 10, and I'll never use one again. I definitely still have experiences. I'm about to be 32 in November, and stuff still happens. It's not nearly as bad as it was. I make jokes about it now. I feel like keeping it lighthearted. It doesn't scare me. But it also doesn't welcome in the darker, maybe more sinister spirits that could potentially make themselves known. The most recent experience I had was actually about a week ago. My grandfather unfortunately passed away early May. It was very unexpected. I took the loss really hard. I get married in a couple of weeks, and he was so unbelievably excited for the wedding. I was given some of his things. I just feel badly. Wanted something of his to keep around. I have a picture of him from barber school. He was a very proud barber for over 60 years, on the same shelf as his photo. I have a pair of beads of his that he wore all of the time. He loved to wear necklaces, and I have his hair cutting scissors. A week ago, I was getting ready for work, and out of nowhere, the light started making this weird buzzing noise and was dimming itself almost in frequency. There was no music on, no TV on. And I giggled and I was like, "Oh, Grandpa, you came to visit? I've been waiting for you." As soon as I said that, the lights shut themselves off and back on. They started making that sound again, and dimming in frequency. The more that I talked to him, the more the lights started doing that. They would get really bright and then really dim again. It was him paying a visit. I still talk to him every now and again, and the lights will do their thing. I'm sure a lot of that is just having his stuff in our apartment, but I definitely still have experiences to this day. I'm just grateful that they're a little bit nicer now than they used to be. If you have a true scary story that happened to you, and you want to share it with the rest of us, go to truescarystory.com and fill out the form. You can always reach out to me in case you have any questions. Anyway, if you like the show, drop some stars for us in the ratings and reviews. I'll be back next week with another story. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. See you soon. Please listen to the story True Hauntings Growing Up with the Unknown. My name is Melissa. I live in a small town near Victorville, California. My whole life, ever since I was 8 years old, I experienced my first paranormal story. As a vine older, I still had a lot of things happen to me. Seen things, heard things, felt different things. Everybody in my family says I have that sixth sense, that I just attract spirits. My grandma's house is in Juarez, Mexico. My dad grew up in that house. It's still in the family to this day. I was 8 years old. We were staying in the guest room. My mom, my dad, my siblings, my aunt and uncle. We were all staying in that spare room. That night, I could not go to sleep. I felt really anxious and scared. I didn't know why, and I remember putting a blanket over my head. But it was really hot. I felt like I had to do that. That's the first time I've ever felt that sensation, or felt that way. I was laying down, facing the curtain that they use as a door. As soon as I took the blanket off over my head, there was a man standing there against the doorway, a tall, slender figure wearing a hat, a trench coat, but it was just a shadow. I didn't see a face, just a shadow of a man standing there. I froze and then started crying. Everybody woke up. I told my mom. I saw somebody standing there by the doorway. Of course, when everybody looked, it was gone. Nobody was there. I didn't see anything the next day, but I don't even think I slept the next night. I just wanted to leave. I have an aunt who had seen that same man in that same room when she saw him. She said that he was kneeling as if he was praying. We're the only two that have ever seen him. My grandma. We said she always knew there was someone in that house, but it never bothered her. She never felt scared or threatened by it. My uncle, who lives in that house with my grandma, he would see things. He would feel like somebody was watching him. So a lot of people didn't like going to my grandma's house for that same reason. My dad did tell me when he had slept in that same room. He was falling asleep. He looked up on the ceiling. He saw a huge butterfly on the ceiling. My grandma always loved butterflies. We don't know who that could be, or if it's a family member. My grandma thinks it might be maybe an uncle of her. First, all I know about the house is that my dad grew up in it. There was one previous owner. There was a woman who got burned in that house, but the person I saw was a man. We still don't know who he is. I know there's been a lot of experiences in that house. My grandma passed away a few years ago. I went back after COVID and everything. It just feels different. It doesn't feel like whatever was there is there anymore. Growing up, I've had a lot of little, different instances and stories. When we first moved to the high desert, actually the first house we bought, a lot of things that would happen in that house. When we first moved in, my dad found a doll. It was made out of cloth. That was shoved inside a mason jar. It was closed. He took it out. He was in the pantry. He opened it. He thinks it was an innocent person that they had trapped in there. And in his way, he was setting that person free. He opened it up. I wouldn't say that's what caused all the things that would happen in that house. When I was younger, I would feel like somebody was watching me. I had to be in elementary school, maybe a 4th, 5th grade, when I was walking to that pantry, actually to grab something. I had my back facing the living room, towards the hallway where all the bedrooms were at. I just remember feeling this really cold sensation, as if something walks through you. My whole body just went cold. I froze. After I got out of that shock, I ran to where my mom and her friend were at, and I started crying. From then, I would always hear people talking or things, or whispers. I would hear my mom calling me. My mom's voice, and I would answer. Nobody was there. Nobody. It wasn't my mom. My mom used to have a lot of porcelain dolls as well. There was a ledge at the very top of the living room, and she had all these porcelain dolls there. I remember vividly laying down on the couch, looking up at this one doll she had in particular. She had curly blonde hair, blue and white dress. I remember looking at the doll. I was just staring at it. I remember the dog moving its head side to side, looking at me. We lived in that house up until I was, like in middle school. That's when we moved to a different house, in the same city, just about in every house I've ever moved to. I've always experienced or seen something, seeing something, hearing something. I started to believe, what if it is me? What if I am the one that everywhere I go, I just bring something with me? I had a friend, a really good friend of mine. I had gone over to her house. When I walked into her room, I felt this really heavy, uncomfortable feeling. I've gone to her house plenty of times, and I've never felt like that. But I walked in and I just wanted to get out of there. I just don't know why. And we left. Came back when I had gone back into her room. She was telling me that. Some of the things that she had in her room. I noticed like new things. She had these monkeys that hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, that belonged to her friend who passed away. When she told me that, I felt this overwhelming sensation, and I think that's what it was, because she had some personal belongings of her friends that I just felt overwhelming energy of sadness. I just started crying, telling her all these things I felt, as if her friend had somehow channeled herself. Through me, I don't know. Like maybe a medium type of situation. It was very emotionally draining too. It does take a lot out of you. I didn't realize because I've never had that happen. The last big experience I really had, I would say, was back in 2019. I don't know if I was just going through a rough place in my life. My mom has always said, whenever you just feel very vulnerable, emotionally or mentally, that's when things try to attach themselves to you. There was my desk I had bought at Goodwill. Everybody knows me to be notorious in buying things, from antique stores, thrift stores, yard sales, and everybody always says, well, you always buy all these things, and you never know what could be attached to it. This desk that I bought, I still have it to this day. It's not in my room, but I still have it to this day. My bed is facing the wall. The desk is on the right-hand side of my wall. Everything's facing my door. I was having a lot of nightmares at that point. I've never been one to have sleep paralysis, but during that point of my life, I was having a lot of sleep paralysis. Every night, I was having really vivid, horrible nightmares. It was just odd. There was not a night that I could not go to sleep without having a nightmare or sleep paralysis. Could never actually rest. I would not turn off my light. I would leave sleep with my light on. Every time I fell asleep, it was almost this kind of sensation of, well, I know it's not going to be good sleep, because this is going to happen, because it was just something that was just happening. Every night, I'll have a cousin, my cousin. She lives in Mexico. She had came with her sister. They were just staying a couple days with us. I never told her about what I was going through. I never told her anything about my room. The next day, my cousin. She had heard somebody trying to open the door. She woke up scared because she heard the door knobbing, but nobody was coming in. Her sister, she has you can say sixth sense. She can pick up on things, or she knows things. She told me there's something in your room. I could feel it when I spent the night here. She had asked me, she's like, "Have you been having a lot of nightmares? Or have you just been feeling scared in your room?" She confirmed my suspicion that there was something attached to a piece of furniture. When she told me that, I just was thinking, it has to be something that I've bought in, that I didn't have before. After she had told me that, she confirmed my suspicion. Okay, I'm not going crazy. These things are happening for a reason. There was one night I was laying in my bed and I thought I was awake. I remember looking over to the right, to my right-hand side of my bed where my desk is at, and I see a woman standing there by my desk. This lady, I didn't know who it was or who she was. She was looking at me with her black, shoulder-length hair, wet white lace wedding dress. She was wearing a mask, though, a tiger mask. When she noticed that, I realized that I was actually not awake. Then that's when she tilted her head. That's what really made me realize she sees me. She knows I'm aware and that I'm seeing her. After that, I just woke up. She is someone that was attached to that desk. I don't know who she is, but the weirdest thing is that after I actually saw her that night, I stopped experiencing any sort of nightmares or sleep paralysis. I still have that desk to this day. After that night that I had seen her, I didn't experience anything else again. At least, nothing major like that. I just never seen her again. I'm just curious still. I think about it to this day. Why is it that when I saw her, she's wearing like a wedding dress? Or that she was wearing a mask, a tiger's mask, which is weird. I just to this day wonder why. Maybe she didn't want to be seen. I think it's just more of a curiosity that I have. To this day, I've had little things happen here and there. In the house I'm currently living in, where I hear people talking or things moving. Just hear noises in the house. It's not a consistent every time. But I will hear things here and there. I think it was last year I had seen him at my house. Actually, where I'm living at right now, in my sister's room. My sister had also says that she's seen him. I know I've looked it up. They say it's the Hat Man. So they say, I don't know if it's something a lot of people have seen. Some people have different names. They say they've seen this man. Tall, slender man. I had seen him about a year ago, when I had spent the night in my sister's room. We were sharing the same bed. And I had seen him by the doorway again, which is funny, because that's where I saw him the first time, when I was younger. That's really the only other time I've ever seen him. Besides when I was little. That same night was the same thing. I was laying there and I couldn't go to sleep. I just had this fence to look over by the doorway. I had seen him there again, just standing there. But this time he was actually in front of the door. He wasn't against the wall. He was actually in front of the door. But the weird thing is, I didn't feel scared. I just acknowledged that he was there. I had told my sister about it, and she's like, yeah, I've seen him a lot. He comes and goes. Would just show up here, and then I won't see him. So, I don't know if this particular person that we've seen is something that it's just maybe part of our family, or maybe I've seen him before. I just don't recollect. Because when you're younger, growing up, there's a lot of things you don't remember. But I just think sometimes you just have that sixth sense where you can see, feel, and hear things that other people can't. I don't really think there's anything that surprises me. There's a lot of skeptics, or people that don't really believe in anything like that, but even then, it's one of those things that when you experience it, it's very real. You can share your own story with me over on scarystory.com, and if you want to support the show, try out Scary, plus you'll also get ad-free episodes. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon, everyone. See you soon, everyone. Please listen to the story, The Convent. I was born and raised in Croatia. I spent 25 years there before I decided to pursue my dreams in Ireland. When I was little, 5 or 6 years old, I was watching the show on the telly and I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. One day I'm going to be here. I'm going to live in this beautiful country. 8 years and 2 months approximately. I'm living in Ireland. I manifested pretty well. I moved into an old convent and an orphanage, dating back from 1807. The complex consisted of the 3 big buildings, with the church attached to a kitchen, and the living room. The original rooms were slightly renovated, but became a hostel student accommodation. It's really hard to find a decent apartment or house to rent, so I was really grateful to have a place to stay. The convent had around 30 rooms. Some of them were single bedrooms. Some were double bedrooms. We had 2 kitchens, 1 living room, a billiard piano room, and a couple of bathrooms. It was a decent site for all of the residents. People were staying there from all around the world. I was lucky enough to get a small, private single bedroom in the convent. My bedroom was a small rectangular shape room, perfect for 1 person as you would enter the room. You had the sink on your left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, there was a single bed. Right beside the sink was a wardrobe. There was an attached desk for like a study or whatever. At the bottom of the room was a window. The doors and the window faced to each other. After 1 month into my stay, I got a job as a waitress in an old pub and restaurant in the city center. This pub was built back in 1886. It used to be a morgue in the basement where we kept beer barrels, spirit bottles, some cleaning stuff, extra chairs. This pub was known to be haunted. I never experienced anything paranormal. In the basement, you could feel very heavy air. It was very uneasy and unsettling to be there. I was avoiding going downstairs unless it was necessary. Other staff experienced empty glasses dropping from the shelves. Stuff moving around, light was flickering. I never seen anything. I was always wondering, was it something that followed me home? My first encounter in the convent was 6 months into my stay. I was walking down the hallway. The hallways was really dark and the light was dimmed. I was always afraid to walk through that hallway. I always tended to run as fast as I can to the kitchen. One evening, I was heading to the kitchen. I was on my phone messaging my friend if she is around, so we can have a dinner together. The moment I lift my head up from the screen, I've seen a dark shadow at the end of the hallway, leading to the kitchen. The figure was looking just like my friend. My friend was a petite girl. She was 5'1" and had dark, curly hair, and the shadow was looking exactly like her. I thought, here is my friend. She is just trying to scare me. She must have seen my message and trying to scare me in the kitchen. I sneaked to the kitchen, opened the door trying to scare her. She wasn't there. It was a pitch black kitchen. No one was around. I rang her phone and I was like, "Are you around number? I'm not home. I left 2 hours ago." I didn't know what to do. I ran straight to the hallway, into my bedroom, and locked the doors. A couple of months after, I was sleeping in my room facing the wall in the middle of the night. I heard noises talking behind my back, a murmuring sound in the language, which I couldn't understand. As I turned myself towards my sink, I saw a tall black figure standing beside my bed, looking directly at my direction with the glowing blue eyes, murmuring sounds. I turned back. I said, "What do you want from me?" The figure just disappeared like a puff in the air, gone. I turned back to sleep. Maybe I was just dreaming. But in the morning I woke up. As I stand up and I've seen some sort of black, shadowy thingy on the floor. I can't think now what would be like. But like an eyeshadow, the black, glowing thing. I was so scared. I remembered the dream or whatever that was. I went to the closest church, which was just across the convent. I got myself a little bit of holy water, and I bleached the entire floor. If I just do that, say some prayers and chanting, this is gonna disappear. After that encounter, it didn't happen for about a year later. I met a guy we start dating, his third or fourth visit that he came into the convent to mine. We just fell asleep around midnight. Not long after we fall asleep, something like a footstep sound woke me up. Something was pacing around the bed, up and down. Up and down, I sat on the bed. I was looking towards the window. It was a pitch black in the room. I didn't see anything. As I sat on the bed, the footsteps immediately stopped. I was like, okay, maybe it could be a rat or something. I laid back and tried to sleep. Minutes gone by, I heard the steps again. I sat on my bed again. The steps stopped. I shake my partner hand. I was like, Can you hear that noise I keep hearing? Someone is walking around the bed. He says, yes, I can hear the sounds, but I'm just pretending that I don't, because I'm very scared at the moment. I was like, oh my God, can you just open the light to see what's going on? The moment the light shines the bedroom, my hanging clothes rack beside my window falls on the floor like something grabbed it, pull it down with the force. This rock was screwed in the wall with the screwdriver. It was hanging on the hook. We saw that rock falling down. Like I didn't see anything, he didn't see anything, but you could feel that something grabbed. I was keep trying that close every single day. I was there for like 2 years in that comment. I was using that clothing rack every single day. I've never seen that force. That could actually fell on the ground. Something grabbed it and pull it with the force. That, how it looks like I start screaming. What is going on? I was crying hysterically. You could see on his face that he was really, really scared as well. But we just went back to bed. I didn't know what to do. It was the middle of the night. I look up my phone. It was 1:30 in the morning. I was staying on my phone the rest of the night, searching for available rooms to rent, and just keep praying for that thing to leave the room. We couldn't fall back to sleep that night. The morning came, and we bolted around 7 a.m. to grab a coffee. I stayed in my apartment for about 3 to 4 days before I got the courage to come back to that room. I did eventually. Moved to another free room with another friend of mine, about 6 months before I move out completely of the convent and find a proper apartment for myself. Everything stopped right after, about 6 months after I moved to another apartment. And luckily, I never had any experiences like this anymore. I never mentioned this to the landlord or the manager of that convent, or even the guards. I mentioned this to my friends. They thought that I'm just going crazy. They didn't believe me. I never say this story to anyone in particular. All that happenings was from 2015 to 2017. I moved in Ireland in 2015, 2017 I moved out. Today there is no more convent. It's the residence buildings. They build up in that area where the convent was. I would love to see a person. And would love to hear the stories. If anyone has experienced anything, I'm pretty sure they did because you could. Feel the air. You could feel the heaviness of the air going around those hallways. And it was just maybe the old walls. The walls were really thick. There were 200 years old buildings. If the walls could talk, that's all I can say. I do hope I will never find out. If that was something that followed me from the pub, where I used to work, or maybe was just an orphan child who was just having a fun with me, tell a friend. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon. Please listen to the story, A Bad Feeling. It was on July of 1987. I lived in the Pacific Northwest. It was during the summer. So it's really hot. It was July. It's really humid where I lived at the time. And it was about 12. I was on summer break alone. So I was alone in the house. They knew it was going to be really hot. So I wanted to make sure all the doors and windows were closed because we didn't have air conditioning. My grandpa, who was in the hospital in California at that time, but they said he was pretty stable. My Nana, who's his wife, my grandmother, she was at home. She wasn't going to visit in the hospital that day. My uncle was over taking care of her. It was in the morning too, but it was already starting to get warm out. I started doing my chores, the dishes, when then I started vacuuming. And then I felt this really sharp tap, like someone poking on my back. I felt it a few times, and I was home alone in the house. I don't have any siblings. I turned around, and there was no one there. There was no one else in the house. The living room got really cold. All of a sudden, I had a really bad feeling. So I turned off the vacuum, and then I went. I just went outside for a little bit to warm up, and I did not vacuum the rest of the day. The run at same time in California is around 10:30. My Nana got a really bad feeling, and she went straight back to the hospital. She told me that when she got there. She took my grandfather's hands, and he opened his eyes. And then he passed away. It happened at the same time that I got tapped on the shoulder, because I remember them telling me it was around 11. I looked at the clock at our house, and it was 11 too. My mom got home, and she said, "I have to tell you something." And she was pretty sad, but I already knew. I don't know how, but I just knew what she was going to tell me. I didn't vacuum for a long time after that. I'm in my 40s now, and even when I'm vacuuming in my house by myself, I leave a door open even if it's snowing here. I'm so still terrified. Like 30 years later that this is going to happen again. My Nana said that she felt for the next year or so that, and my grandfather would send her messages, but no one in my family believed her. 'Cause I just thought, she's just the grieving widow and making stuff up. But then in this time, it's a couple years later in like 1989, my Nana was going to go visit my great aunt, who was in San Francisco. She was getting in the car, and she said, my grandpa spoke to her and told her not to go. She got out of the car and she called my great aunt. And they said, they calculated that the time it would have happened, she would have been on the bridge. And the time it collapsed, I don't know if you ever knew that. About the Bay Bridge collapsing, it was just toppled down onto another layer of the bridge. And hundreds of people died. It's really tragic. As with most of our calls go, I asked Tara if she had any more experiences, and she thought of one more. Here it is. My friend's friends got in 7th grade. It was summer. Got like a Ouija board, which my mom always told me, do not mess with those. Do not bring it in my house. I wasn't going to bring it in the house. But I went over to a friend of a friend's house. There's this girl, and she was just a little off. There was just something weird about her. But my best friend was with me, and it was daytime. I figured it would be okay. So we went over to her house, and we started playing with it. She started asking it questions. What's your name? Are you from here? Are you a bad spirit? And it said yes. So I was done at that point. I was like, okay, we should stop fighting like this. But she wanted to keep going, which was a little unnerving. So then she just kept asking it questions. Then my other friend was like, okay, we just need to stop this now, because we're inviting something bad into the house. We stopped, and we said goodbye. And then all the magnets on her fridge flew off the fridge to the other side of the house. I've never seen anything like. It was terrifying, and the house got really cold. We got up and pretty much ran out of the house. And I never played with her again. I think she disappeared a couple years later. She just stopped coming to school, but yeah, just a really bad vibe for her. Don't leave just yet, since today's stories are short. I am publishing 3 in total. Have you listened to them yet? They're up and available now as separate episodes. Also remember, you can share your own story with me over on True, scarystory.com, for your chance to have it featured. On an upcoming episode to listen ad-free, try out Scary Plus over on scaryplus.com. Completely free for 14 days, and then $4.99 a month, and you can cancel whenever you want. Thank you very much for listening. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon.